Diane,
Yes.
this is Bob Perry. I'm a
Hi, Bob.
longtime Melrose resident.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, I moved up to here. Retired up here in 17, but we lived in Melrose for about 36 years up in the Highlands.
The Highlands. And I just sold my house after 26 years. And I was down right off of the Fells, in between Wyoming and the Fells.
Yeah.
In that quadrant.
Yeah, we were up off of the Highlands train station up the hill.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That way, right on the Wakefield line. In fact, part of my property was in Wakefield. So how are things in Melrose these days?
Crazy.
I know the housing prices have gone really crazy.
And the timing was very unusual for me in terms of selling based on COVID. But it is just, Bob, it is just so hot, that market. You cannot believe it. It's insane. Yeah.
In the 4 years since we sold our house, it went up almost 25%. It's absolutely amazing.
I've been told that in the year since I've sold mine, that it has gone up 15%. Blows me away.
Yeah.
As I said to Nancy, I couldn't afford to buy my own house.
I know, yeah. That's same here.
Very ironic situation after paying a mortgage for all those years.
I think you can go ahead and start, and I will.
Do I need to assent to the?
Just click, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't know if I needed to do that or you were gonna do that.
I can hear and I'll join hopefully visually in a minute.
And if you can't, I can talk mine on.
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to shut the door?
No, I think we can wait because then I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, I think we're about ready to get started. And I want to welcome all of you. Unfortunately, as beautiful as the weather has been, it's not that way today. We were supposed to meet out here on the deck, but this is, I hope everyone's audio is fine and their video is fine. If there are any issues, please just let us know. Caroline is in control of all the technology here today. So I'm just the puppet. All right, so we're all set with our component of guests, Caroline?
I think so.
Okay, I think I see Susan. Could I ask all of you just quickly, I know I've met a couple of you at different meetings, but could I ask all of you just to briefly introduce yourself and let me know how long you have been with CREA? Starting with Susan and Rosie.
Oh, Sue. Oh, sorry, I should change my name on there, but yeah, so it's Sue Reed. I have been, I guess it's been about a year.
Recent, okay.
Yeah. Has it been a year or 2 years? I don't even know. Anyway, I think it's a year. And I've been on the board officially, I guess, really just since June, but I joined in January. And I live in Highland Green. And as you know, I'm friends with Nancy Harding.
Thank you, Sue. Bob?
Hey, I've been on the boards for about a year and a half right now. Currently the treasurer. Live at Highland Green and with Ron Strand, who I think may be on later. He said he's going to try to get on. Do a lot of groundskeeping work around the ecology center.
Hi, Ellen. Oh, Ellen.
Yeah, I'm okay. Okay, got it now. I'm Ellen Bennett. I've been, I think I joined the board in about 5 years ago. And I'm currently chair. I live in Topsham on Elm Street. And we back up to the river. So we're in a very lovely natural spot.
Great. Thank you. Hi, Carrie. I haven't met you before.
I've been with CREA for about 5 years and I'm one of the educators.
Thank you. Jan? Unmute yourself, Jan.
There we go. I'm Dan Smith, Topsham resident, joined the board in 2001 and have been active in CREA ever since.
Thank you. Hi, Sarah.
Hey there. I was one of the original educators at CREA. So I've been working with CREA actually since we started offering programming back in 2007, when we started offering our first vacation camps and school programs. And I work with Carrie. We're the primary two educators who go into the schools and work with the kids.
Thank you. Timothy, if you would unmute. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Tim. I've been with CREA since a little bit before COVID, I think. And I have a couple of kids who have experienced CREA programs and camp. And I'm a marketer for the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you. Andrea?
I just started as a board member this year in June, although I was a staff member a couple years ago, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago for a couple of years. So I have a little bit of CREA background, and I live in North Yarmouth.
Thank you. Jenny? Good morning.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I am the camp director over the summer and year-round administrator for the rest of the time. And I have been with the organization for just about 3 years now.
Thank you. Nancy?
I'm Nancy Harding. I live in Highland Green. Friend of Sue Reed. She was the one that got me interested in CREA, and my background is in development and fundraising, and Diane and I worked for a lot of years together, doing fundraising for small nonprofits in and around New England and other parts of the country. So
Thanks, Nancy. Susan?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Susan Ray Reeves. I have been on the CREA board, I don't, somewhere between 2 and 3 years. Time is a funny thing. I live in Topsham. I'm retired, and my professional stuff was a combination over the years of fundraising and social work. And the fundraising was always in sort of community-based social service or settlement house settings.
Interesting. Challenging. Caroline, are you on okay in there?
no.
Okay. Well, I think we should. Okay, I think we should proceed. I know we had blocked out an extensive amount of time when we thought we would be out on the deck. We will move a little faster today because we won't have a coffee break, although if anyone needs to go out and break. As Caroline may have mentioned, this program is being recorded, and that is for your information. Also, we would ask just for you to, there's a small group, I would say just mute yourselves because of the natural background noise. But where we're such a small group, and I actually have the larger screen here so I can see all of you very well. Let's just do a little old fashioned, raise your hand if you have a question, and then we can unmute. I think that might be easier where there's just a handful of us than going into chat. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for committing your time this morning. And I know that I had sent Caroline the PowerPoint at the beginning of the week. I believe you all have it. I have it up on share. Is there anyone who cannot see the PowerPoint? We're good? Let's roll. Okay, so we're going to take a look today at some of the fundamentals of development. We're going to look at the overall landscape, and then we're going to drill down a little bit into understanding donors and your own role in this process. And I'd like to emphasize that Caroline had shared with Nancy and I a great deal of background information, general information on donors, nothing that it would be confidential, of course, but also your development plan and some planning tools. which when we first met with Caroline a couple months ago, we suggested really drilling down on that and making it more simplified. And we came up with a few things, including a calendar, which she has. I don't know if she shared that with you yet, but my recommendation would be post this meeting that you all have the opportunity to browse through that, because it's basically a roadmap for what needs to happen in the next quarter and beyond. And also will be a corollary to some of what we're going to talk about today. So with that, let's get underway. And today's content is looking at the landscape, the donor process, your own role and scope, and some action steps that you can take. One of the things that we have always done, Nancy and I, when we've worked with clients, is introduce them to the landscape of charitable giving, which we feel is very important because it helps you understand the position of your own organization and the sourcing and the distribution of charity in this country, which is a $474 billion industry right now. And that's not the corollary. That's what's being contributed at this point. We have broken the $400 billion mark, and that has been quite an enormous step. It happened a couple of years ago, but we kept it up this year in terms of what was going on. So this item you see, Giving USA, is the fundraisers Bible Almanac baseline data consolidator, actually has been since 1956. And some of the data you'll see is a 4-decade. They've compressed it from 80 to 20, which was smart. So the first thing we're going to look at is, where does money come from? Where do charitable gifts come from in this country? And that's an important aspect, because we think sometimes there are misconceptions of where it comes from. As you can see by this pie chart, individuals comprise of 69%. I would immediately ask you to add the 9% of bequests, totaling 78%, which is $366 billion, a little quick math, are the lion's share of charity. This is a 70 to 80% ratio. This has been the ratio for the last 30 years I've used this documentation, and actually historically. So when today we are focusing on you creating relationships with individuals, this is the reason why, despite what your other revenue sources are, and we know we always want to have multiple sources, this is a critical resource and a critical source of funding that we have to focus on, particularly as a smaller organization with limited resources ourselves. Foundations typically will give anywhere from 12 to 16% because of the amazing growth in the S&P in 2020, despite some ups and downs. Foundations gave a record-breaking 19% of all monies, about $88.5 billion. Corporations average about 4 to 6%. In a good year, they may give 5%, again, based on the gross domestic product. What you're going to see this year is foundation giving is down, corporate giving is down. So that's where it comes from. So think of that in terms of where we're going to focus our attention. The next slide shows where it goes. And I know this is a bit of a busy slide, but what I would like you to focus in on is that bottom, upper left, straight 12 o'clock, look right to 12 o'clock, and you'll see 3% environment animals, $16 billion. What I can tell you is that when Nancy and I first began in this industry, animal and humane and environmental giving was not even tracked separately. Since 1985, it has been, and we'll take a look at its trajectory. It looks like a small percentage of the pie, and of course it is, but it is the fastest growing segment of all the sectors. Just as an anecdote, ever since we've been doing this, although religion looks smaller, 28%, when Nan and I started out in this business, religion was about 60% of where the funds went. What this reflects now is that in 25, 30 years ago, there were not as many nonprofits. There are 1.3 million plus nonprofits in this country today, which means that's your competition. So learning how to do this better is absolutely essential. So we know where we stand in terms of the grand pie. Let's take a little look at how this giving mirrors with other organizations. Again, a little bit of a busy slide, but these are Giving USA proprietary slides, so you're not supposed to change them, and I didn't. Go all the way to the bottom on the left-hand column, and you will see environment and animals. The gold running bar, sorry, keep going, indicates an 11.6% growth. That is an amazing level of growth. It's almost the third highest growth in all of the sectors. And this has been a continual trend over the past couple of years. The uptick in environment and animal giving has outpaced growth in all other sectors. For your organization, and I'm just gonna flip down one more here. Come on, let me flip. Where's my next? There we go. You can take a look at the trajectory on this graph, and it's just off. Sorry. And what it's doing, thank you. Yeah. What you can see is it's rapidly growing, not only for the reasons that more environmental groups are present, more humane groups are present, but humane groups were a more passive recipient of bequests and money. Today, they are much more aggressive, as are environmental groups. Environmental groups are just exploding in how assertive they are. I believe Tim will back up on this one. The Nature Conservancy, their campaign is just astounding. They've had an amazing track record this year, exceeding all expectations, according to Giving USA, of how much more they've raised. So you are in a sector that is bursting with opportunity. And that's what I want to project to you that, excuse me, keep going.
Diane, shouldn't we also be included in the education sector? Or I'm not really sure how that's defined, but.
Okay, education sector is defined typically, and I'm not sure if you're, which subcategory you fall into, whether you fall into both education and environmental. Yes. But I would say at this point for you folks, the education sector right now really tends to be, and whatever your 501 subset status is, the education sector for the giving that would be relevant to you folks, education is not as relevant as this particular environmental giving growth trajectory. I would think, Andrea, that if someone is giving to you, even though it may be designated for your ed programs, it would still fall under environment. Ed tends to be really relegated to higher ed, secondary, and pre-K.
Nancy, that 3% for environmental animals, any idea how that splits between environmental and animals?
Yes, we'll get into that in a second. What actually, humane had even a larger increase this year, but the preponderance of the 16 billion is absolutely environmental, because you have the Nature Conservancy, the Environmental Defense. They're much larger, broad-based national organizations that really supersede any other national organizations. Although Growth and Humane was stronger, it is not pulling in as much as, I would say about 2/3 of the 16 is strictly for the environment. Yeah. Okay, so if that's what's going on outside, let's take a little snapshot about how donors have reacted to everything. And this has been an extraordinary year, as most of you know, between the environment, political scene, social justice, of course, the pandemic. And one of the great concerns moving into the given year was that the pandemic reaction to it and the extraordinary generosity that it created would cannibalize other giving. That did not happen. In fact, every sector, with the exception of the arts and humanities, had increases from year to year in their giving. So here's a little bit about what we know about donors in general. And what I'd like you to think about is some of the donors I asked you in your prep work to think about, but this is an overview. Donors are highly influenced by external factors, particularly those that have a degree of urgency that is repetitive. We witnessed this in 9/11. We witnessed this with Katrina. We've witnessed this with the tsunami, other catastrophic events. I'm not sure that any catastrophic event that has happened in my career has ever lasted as long and impacted as many people as COVID. So the urgency, the repetition is just making an incredible pouring out of people giving. More than $21 billion was contributed to COVID and COVID related, not just research, funding to assist in many ways. So that's something that we all need to look at when we think about our donors. So established donors, folks that have been around for a while, and this is a cross generation. This is all the demographics. Anyone who has already been giving in charitable giving gave more last year for the most part. Although they gave more, they tended to diversify and shift their recipients based on external factors. The pandemic, as I said, just was an amazing reaction. Also, the social justice movement, galvanized by Black Lives Matters, raised about $14 billion, an amazing thrust and response to that. And also we were in 2020 still in the throes of a very heated political campaign. So many generous donors would support that as well for the candidate of their choice. Now, new donors, things like a pandemic or a tsunami tend to galvanize as well younger donors, new donors across the board. So there was a tremendous uptick in first-time donors. They use very different channels than established donors. Online giving increased more in 1 year than it had in the last 5 years it's been tracked. New channels, moderate giving. Average gift on Facebook is about $35. Average online gift is about $150. And average traditional gift for giving constituents is about $700. Younger donors focus very much on human needs, human rights, and also favoring the environment. There's a tip. One of the things as we look at all of ourselves today, we need to, in this organization, begin attracting younger donors because they will be our future in terms of volunteering and in terms of their energy and enthusiasm. Any questions so far? Okay, come on, let's go. Now, one of the things that we always talk about is a culture of philanthropy and fostering a culture of philanthropy. These are very standard words and terms that you'll see if you do any reading, additional reading in this industry. But basically what this means is, as CREA is a teaching organization and an organization that wants to bring people in to learn about the environment, you are a giving organization yourself. And you want that giving to be reflected in how you interact with potential donors. You cannot always be an organization of we need, we want. You need to have a culture of all of you giving. And I don't mean just pocketbook giving. I mean giving of your talent and your expertise so that you can, through your own knowledge of the organization, help educate others and bring them closer. And we'll talk a little bit about the steps to that. But thinking about that first pie chart with all that money coming from individuals, the relationships that you as board members and staff members create are the key to longevity, to fostering a culture of philanthropy in an organization. And I want to make a very strong point, and we'll make it in a few different ways. Many of you will use the term fundraising, and Nancy and I will tend to use development. Although they are interchangeable, there is a subtle difference, and we don't think it's so subtle in the industry. Think of when you go to a outside event that's either sponsored by a community or by a service organization. you drive up and a fireman does the boot. You're at a fair, there's a young group of children raising money for something. Someone just rings your doorbell. I don't know if that happens in Highland Green anymore, but it used to happen in the old days. But when someone just asks you outright without knowing you, that is real grassroots fundraising, and it's highly transactional. It's not about having any kind of knowledge. It's a gut urgency reaction. What we witnessed this year with new donors, that is actually more transactional, although they were motivated by some very important causes. That is transactional. The key will be for organizations to see how those people are retained. And that's going to be a question when we talk about a little more about CREA. What happened in CREA this year? Did you have more donors? Will you be able to retain them? Was it a different giving analysis? And that's incumbent on the staff to analyze what has happened in the last year. Development is highly relational, and it centers around the donor. You'll see up in that header, donor-centric philanthropy. That means instead of anything revolving around what CREA needs, CREA wants to do, you connect with the donor to understand his or her values. And relational fundraising, 80% of it is about learning, cultivating, and stewarding. 10% is the ask. And the asks come easy once you have a long-standing relationship and someone understands exactly what it is your organization does. Everybody okay with that differentiation? So I had asked you all and sent something before your last board meeting to think about an individual who is a prospective donor who you might want to begin placing into this process that we're doing today. And then perhaps someone who is not currently donating or currently associating, who you would like to bring into the fold. I hope as we move through the content that you will be able to think of those two folks, maybe just write them down or circle their names and see what things might be applicable to them or what takeaways that you can use today that will be helpful for you. Now, one of the things that we know, and we met with Caroline originally, is how well does anyone really know your donors here? And that is the best job in the world for a board member and a staff member to interact and get to know your donors. They're wonderful people. They clearly, if they're giving to you, share some of your values, and the exploration is to uncover how many of their values are the same. What is it about CREA that they are really driven to be engaged or to believe that your organization is worthy? So let's be thinking about that and how we interact with our donors. We know you're going to have a really good opportunity coming up when you have the Highland Green concert. That's a nice, easy opportunity. It's a collaborative. It's not a pressure situation. It's all about meeting and greeting, which is exactly what we want to encourage you to do. No one today is going to ask you to go out and sit down and solicit someone else. That is not what we're looking at right now. Okay, so if this is part of where the money comes from, let's just take a quick standard view. These are the different methods that are used in raising money. And if an organization used all of these, they'd be a highly sophisticated, mature, comprehensive program. We know you do memberships, you do some annual direct mail in the sense of mailing to your own donors. I don't know what kind of memorial giving tools you use. We suggested that be a good tool. Major gifts is something we'd like to move you into. Events, there can be special events, there can be friend-raising events, there can be fundraising events. That is an aspect. Capital or special project campaign. When we first met with Caroline, she mentioned that there were a lot of early on feelings about launching a capital campaign, to which we said, great option, good plan, but where's your foundation? Where's your rebar? What have you built? Can't launch a capital campaign unless you have a robust annual giving program and donors to go along with it. and the mechanics to operate it. Plan giving, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. That is what we call legacy giving. If you recall from that pie chart, 9% of individual gifts were from legacy giving, a very large component and a growing component. I have used your 20-year logo because it could be offloaded from your website. You're going to be moving into 25 years in a few years. That is exactly the time to launch a legacy society. Perfect timing for your organization. What you want to understand about legacy giving is it isn't just bazillionaires who do it. Many, many, many people who give bequests are people with estates valued at $1 million or less. And that is a very easy number in these days to have $1 million or less if you're thinking about long term. And one of the things that we know is that individuals who give through bequests, more than half of them were donors that were giving under $25,000 a year. Many of them are donors giving less than $5,000 a year. Longevity in giving and longevity with your association and the relationships you create is the linchpin to bequest giving. Of course, you have to have the highway to do it. You have to have a bequest program and you have to be promoting of it. But it is absolutely the largest growing area, because in the next 15 years, there will be a phenomenal transference of wealth as the silent generation and the boomers all begin to transition their wealth. And it's estimated, right now it's estimated that about half of that wealth will go to charity. So this is a very fruitful area, but organizations need to be ready for it. And we will see in a minute where legacy giving comes in. I know when we reviewed your development plan that there was some talk about creating a legacy society and how to go about it. I'm going to give you a few tips on that. I think what you want to make sure of is that you know who your group is. Typically, folks 45 and up are those that have estate plans. That 45 number is younger. It used to be around 50, 56, but it's getting younger. A lot of younger people have more, and they're thinking more about their future. One thing I can tell you is that women are a key segment for bequest giving, and there's a few reasons for that. Women all tend to give more in their death than they've ever been able to give in their lives. Couple factors. One, if they didn't earn their own revenue and they're in a spousal relationship or a shared relationship. The other is that women hold on because of their independence to their money, typically until they pass, because most of them are alone. And with the demographics of more women being single, that will really influence giving in, I would think, primarily in the boomers, late boomers, very, very soon. Now, we've talked about some of the different methods. Let's take a look about what these methods cost, because the cost of fundraising is always something that people are on top of. This is a benchmarking device. It's been used for quite a while. As you can see, I've highlighted in green your agency. We do not have the data at this point to know what you're spending exactly on fundraising. We understand your budget tends to be encompassing, not line itemed for fundraising. You're a modest organization, but we would assume that you will be looking at your renewals and your memberships within the compliance levels, which would be anywhere up to 25 to 30 cents on the dollar. What you can see is special events, which everybody wants to do because they're fun, is the most expensive and has been the most expensive way to raise money. Now, caveat, given the pivot to virtual, that was not true in 2020. It remains to be seen whether organizations will restore their type of special event giving. Many small organizations raise a great deal of their money from special events. Most small organizations blend events with their renewal and mail programs, and that is usually the base of their revenue. So that's a little on the industry. You'll see on the very bottom, plan giving and volunteer solicitations. Peer-to-peer is now the more common term for volunteer solicitations. Obviously, you can see how inexpensive that is. Plan giving can run a little more expensive because you have initial startup costs, but in the long run, it will amortize. Okay. Now, if this is what the picture is, who are our prospects and where do they come from? This is called the constituency circle, and every organization has a different set of constituents. But some of the cores that are those right in the bullseye, if you will, of this were developed many, many years ago by an industry leader, Hank Rousseau, and this has been the norm. I have placed at the end of this presentation an exercise for all of you to do on your own to create a constituency circle for CREA. This will give you a sense who is right in the nucleus, the board, management, key major donors, very often staff, depending on the kind of organization it is. And then you have a whole ring of circles. The idea is that you place these people on the circles, visualize it as coming into the concentric circle, into the nucleus, or a pipeline. They get fed in from the outer circles, and you engage them, work with them, foster them, and cultivate them. That leads us to what the prospect process is. And this is really where we feel you folks are right now, given when you began the development process. When Nancy and I came into the industry, this was called the 5 Eyes. And you can see they're pretty simple. And basically it follows Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And a lot of what you're going to be doing very soon is identifying and interesting people and getting them just to understand your organization and teaching them about them. What we have done on the next slide is to show you the corollary between where those gifts that we talked about line up. Remember, right at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned fundraising as a transaction as opposed to a relationship. Entry-level giving, the very bottom of the pyramid, excuse me, and annual giving tends to be more transactional, tends to be the beginning of gifts. Special projects is once someone has gotten onto your organization, they're in the involved mode, they are much more invested. And major and capital and legacy gifts are the complete top of the pyramid. Now, to get to those top gifts requires a tremendous amount of cultivation, as you'll see marching up on the left, and stewardship. With a small organization like CREA, all of you are the principal stewards in interacting with donors. It's a very important thing to realize a couple things. Lower level is transaction, higher level catalytic transformational, moving up, greater, larger gifts, fewer people. This pyramid, as you see it, you could break it down to say 20% are mega and legacy gifts and everything else is general. What I can tell you is we have what we call the 80-20 rule. 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the people. And in major campaigns, it's more about the 1 to 99% rule. And we're seeing that more and more. So you can think about the fanning out of the pyramid is where the greater number of donors are from annual gifts down. So in terms of these gifts, we have these names for them. How do we translate or correlate an action that gets us to that point? What walks us up the pyramid? And I'll start right at the top because I mentioned that that could be legacy mega gifts. Systematic, intense stewardship, longevity with the organization, one-on-one engagement with you, staff, leadership. This is essential for these types of gifts, and they take the longest, but they are, of course, transformational and have the biggest impact on an organization. Major and capital gifts, what are activities that get people to that level? Well, if they're involved in a feasibility study, they've been highly cultivated, they sit on your board or an ad hoc committee, they're a participant, and they also consistent stewardship. Special project or designation. the first thing that comes to my mind with an organization like this is creating campership scholarships. That's a great special project or designated project that could really help your organization, but it would be highly attractive to people for the educational component and the environmental component. The last two levels, donor events, sponsors, general annual gifts, could be memorial gifts. And on the very lowest level, there's your membership, info requests, perhaps service users, etc. So those are the activities that may correlate with those type of gifts. And it's very good to think of that, because we don't want to think about introducing ourselves and our organization to someone and turning around and saying, oh, would you like to be in a bequest society? Or would you like to make $1 million gift? No, it doesn't happen that way. It is a trajectory, a process, a courtship. Any questions so far? Okay. How does this work in terms of application for you? It's not about a geometry and a triangle. It's about a cycle of interaction. You and your donors, you and your colleagues, and you will see this slide twice in this presentation because it will reinforce what do we do to connect with donors. I have put on this the quarters of a year, just in terms of the calendar year, because the traditional donor cycle is that about 50% of all gifts given come in the last quarter of the United States calendar year. Even if your organization functions on the fiscal, that's the donor's headset. So we want to be wired to understand what our donors want. How do we move people up this pyramid? What do we do? Well, we have to communicate with them. And that takes many different forms. We have to educate them. And that all takes many different forms. But if we don't step up and do it ourselves, it's not going to happen. Once you begin to communicate, you will then be able to create relationships. And the creation of those relationships is listening to people and understanding what they want. That harkens to donor-centric. Again, we need this, we need that. No, what is the donor value? Always a question you want to ask yourself when you meet someone. Learn what he or she likes about the organization. Easiest question in the world. It's not a yes or no answer. What draws you to CREA? What program interests you the most? If someone says, I'm not that familiar with the program, bang, there's your opening right there. You can start to talk a little bit about the programming. Very important. So what we show in this cycle is outreach and communication, cultivating, fulfillment. Once someone is interested in listening and understands, you can then demonstrate how your organization succeeds at its mission. Once you do that, it's much easier to present and ask, because that person then understands, and it's not what we call a cold call. Never going to be cold calls in an organization like this. This is a very hand-holding organization, and I mean that in the most positive sense. You're physically, you have two locations, you're in a place where you're in people's backyards, which automatically, just as Ellen said, the river is my view. What a vested interest. Why wouldn't I want to protect it? So you have a wonderful anchor to keep people engaged with you. Any questions about this process? And I would just, if you can't see it large enough on your screen, note the photo in the middle. That's donors, prospects, volunteers, and constituents. Everybody in that big circle. Okay, so now the question is, if that's what it takes, who makes this happen and how? So the who is always the board, the volunteers, and the staff. You are the principal players, you drive the engine, you are the folks who collectively begin to interact with donors. Whether you interact with one donor at a time or more than one of your action steps this year as we close this program out will be that you steward one donor yourself. So the education aspect is critical. Interaction with donors is essential. It's the only way you're going to get to know them. And that helps you to do what we call grow your own philanthropy, which is evolving to a term that has really emerged this year called trust-based philanthropy. All that means is that donors so believe in your organization that you're accountable, you're efficient, you're doing things wisely. That's why they give. They're not going to sit here and say, do you do this, do you do that? But getting to that base of trust, that's the work of stewardship and education. So now that we know a little bit about that, what else motivates donors? And again, when I'm using these terms, I'm looking at the broad spectrum of donors. Every generation, there's in some generations, there's a little more of one thing that's important than the other, but this is an overview. We ever did something on just demographics, we really drill down, but this is an overview. You'll see that little star. Those are best institutional practices that have a direct overlay and impact onto fundraising and fund development. So understanding the mission, one of the arrows on the cycle. Visionary and responsive leadership. This is a critical component. You are the leaders along with the staff, but people look to a board to decide what they're going to do. A knowledgeable, dedicated, and professional staff. And I think just from what little I've picked up walking around here in the last week, the respect for what CREA does and its staff is amazing. And it's very, very complimentary, which automatically allows your organization to have a different degree of credibility right from the get-go. You don't have to turn around and validate. Our staff knows what it's doing, and we do very good programming. Funding opportunities that relate to impact giving. I'm sure Tim at the Nature Conservancy could speak to this very eloquently, that there are certain activities and certain things that a donor resonates with that feels really makes a difference. We all need operating money. Someone's got to pay the light bills. We get that. But we also need to be putting out to donors things that have a tremendous appeal to them, not altering our program, but highlighting, putting a spotlight on things that may be of interest to them. Again, you don't learn that unless you talk to the donor. You're not going to just throw things against the wall and see if it sticks. You have to listen. And donors want to be heard. And they want someone to be consistent with them. That's your stewardship approach. Okay. Any questions on that? So we talked a little bit about donor preferences. This is a very easy way for you to remember some of the 4 key points of what motivate donors and what their priorities are. Again, this is across the demographic spectrum. I use these 4 criteria because the percentages of people are so high that value them. Your reputation, almost 70%. Your mission, almost 70%. That the gift was used wisely. What is the efficiency, efficacy of the organization? Do I have trust that they're using it wisely? 71%. 75%. Does my gift make a difference? These are 4 key factors that really trigger donors to give. And as you think about translating this, think of 1 or 2 things at CREA that you feel your giving makes a difference at. If you're a staff member, think about 1 or 2 things that when you do this, whether it's camp, teaching, a lesson, that it really is making an impact. This is essential to donors to garner their attention and keep it. Any questions about why those things would be important? How do you all feel, by a show of hands, in your own giving priorities about these 4 things? Take CREA out of the mix right now. If you're giving to other organizations, by a show of hands, how important is the mission to you? Okay, so that you've just hit 80%. Okay, what about the efficacy and the use of your gift? Whoops, somebody just popped back in. Thank you. Tim, that's not a concern for you?
It's not that it's not a concern for me. I'm very cognizant of the overhead piece. And so I think that sometimes folks who invest with their giving do so differently than the way they invest in business. And I don't think that's always fair.
I would agree exactly. We all talk about the myth of the overhead in this business. You, as that benchmarking table indicated, there is no way to raise money without investing money to do so. And the level of investment needs to be balanced. It's one of the things many of you, you're all probably very savvy in terms of looking at things online and researching. That's another key component. Whenever we look at Charity Navigator or other activities and we see the rankings of people and look at the rankings of what people spend, I always find that to be disconcerting, because typically smaller organizations, it costs them more because they have less, and larger organizations, it costs them less because they're on such a grander scale. That's a tough one to really look at. And years ago, when that number was factored, people didn't even factor in, they threw fundraisers in with the administrative staff. They didn't even factor in salaries. I mean, today a major gift officer really needs to, within 3 or 4 years, return their salary and triple or quadruple it in large organizations. So that is a very squishy place, but it is an important aspect. Yes, Caroline.
Well, I can't turn on my my microphone, but I wanted to ask a question related to that. Is there a way to explain the necessity of the operational costs? Because, you know, we spend a ton or we invest a lot in communicating with our donors just to retain them, to communicate and educate, you know, communicate with them, educate them. And, you know, that's part of our sort of baseline operational costs. So how can you talk to your donors in a way to make them understand that that's part of our sort of baseline costs? It's not like it's not the kind of impact giving that you were talking about earlier.
But if you look back on one of the first keys in the cycle, outreach and communication are critical. No one will know your story if you don't voice it yourself. It's the most legitimate expense in any fundraising division, because you have to be able to, whether it's electronically, traditional collateral, you have to communicate with them. And now today things can be balanced. You may do some more things electronically than you did in the past. Years ago, before we had all this technology, everything was traditional collateral. So
but is that legitimate to go, you know, when you're talking to donors about where your costs are, you know, that a significant chunk of them are in communication and outreach.
Okay, but my guess is, given that you're a service organization, that your salary costs for executing the program far exceed that. You probably use what?
Yeah,
58 to 63% of your budget on salaries to operate the program.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
That's the driving factor. Without the people, you don't have the program. That means what you're spending to communicate is far less significant, but critical.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Anyone, as board members who approve the budget, is there anyone who would challenge that posture?
I think I might articulate it differently. I mean, I see it as sort of the importance of unrestricted giving, you know, so that the money can go to where it's needed the most, and not get into the details about our overhead and all of that stuff.
And that's the basis of trust-based philanthropy, which happily many, many foundations are actually beginning to shift their giving into that. And a couple of enormous donors this year have put that out there on the high net worth level And it is catching on, and most foundations hopefully will do that. I think one of the things we always need to show, aside from being accountable in our bottom lines, is that where is the real crux of our work? And in this organization, it's the program piece, as it is in most. I mean, we don't make widgets here. We teach people and we engage them and we do experimental learning. And that is always a people dependent activity. And that's where the costs are. Social service agencies, 65–70% of their costs are all staff. And that's not considered inappropriate. So when you look at fundraising being maybe 15, 20, 25% of your costs, that is modest compared to what you're spending to execute your mission. Any other comments on that? Okay, so here are some stats. We don't need to go through this completely, but I'd like to share with you that every year for about the past 18 years, a fabulous study has been done by a woman named Penelope Burke. She literally interviews donors. It's known as the Burke Donor Study. Every year I participate in it and get all her data, do her webinars now. I used to see her in person, like all of us. But her studies are extremely accurate in the sense that she just doesn't throw out a survey. She actually works with donors and has a cadre of donors that are repetitive. So the credibility and consistency in her findings is just fantastic. And these, again, across the board, tends to be a little higher level donor than that entry level first time donor, more a routine donor, as I would say myself, Nancy, maybe perhaps many of you are. And it's really interesting. I've put these up here there's just 4 major categories, but again, the preponderance of people that think these things are important should motivate us as a nonprofit to do them correctly. And believe it or not, about 90 to 92% of donors want to know that their gift is properly acknowledged, accurate, and timely. I'm not talking about my name on a wall. I'm talking about the basic response when a donor gives a gift. Now, if that many people want it, there's a really big chance that it's not being done all that well by different organizations. And that's one of the things that Nancy and I have always harped on when we're with a client. You have got to properly acknowledge every donor in the right way. Don't just make it a canned, what I would call a crappy canned letter. It needs to be personalized. You need to engage people in that way. That thank you is absolutely the segue to your next gift. There's no doubt about it. If there's any takeaway today, take that away, because when Caroline on the steps asks you to say thank you to a donor, that is your key role. And it's the easiest thing in the world for a board member to do. You are a totally legitimate role to do it. So we would want to see you engaged in writing notes, phone call, email, whatever mode is the most comfortable for you. But board thank yous are so powerful and they are so underutilized and underestimated. You cannot underestimate the value of it. Obviously, dovetailing with communication, knowledge. 94% of Burke surveys, people want to learn more. Now, we think they don't, but they do. But you don't know that unless you talk to them. And also leading to whether you communicate well. How do you message? 84% of her donors in the last, and this is an aggregate for the last 5 years, consistently report that they don't receive the kind of information from the organization to motivate them to give, to continue, or motivate them to give more. So what does that tell us about how we message and communicate? That's something very important as a takeaway. You are all an ancillary voice of this organization, and your voice helps to communicate all of that. Accountability, back to Tim's comment. It is important. I think CREA's got a nice little tight budget, and I don't think that's a huge issue. I don't think anyone would say there's a lot of fluff here. And the results. Now, how are you going to show your results? Well, obviously you can't turn the environment around in a minute, but Nancy and I were discussing this, and one of the key areas for you folks is the camp. What's the enrollment? What's the retention? People clamoring for it. What is the experience of those children? Can you tell those stories? That is the seedling for the next generation, which you are planting. And it's a complete mission moment for you folks. Don't let it slip out of your hands. When's the last time any of you, and I COVID excluded, but when is the last time any of you came to camp for an afternoon, for a session, and just hung out, observed, watched, visited, watched the magic that happens when you educate children? I was delighted when Caroline shared with Nancy and I back in the spring, actually, the videos of your wonderful instructors. I found them fascinating. I can't imagine being able to sit in the classroom and do it. That would be even better. So you have great opportunities to demonstrate your mission and what it means and how effective it is. Okay, so how are we going to get some of this done? Well, we need to think about best practices. We need, as a group, to understand our role first, understand our expectations, and get into them. You need to team up and be partners with each other and with the staff. And what does that mean? What does it mean to play together? Endorse the strategies and the tactics. It's great to have a million different ideas, but if you put a plan in place and you want to accomplish, say, 3 things from the get-go, stick to it. Try not to, we don't want to quell creativity, but at the same time, if you have a game plan and there are best practices that you know have been proven in other places, you adapt them to CREA. That's what you want to do. You don't want to be all strung out, going 9 or 10 different ways with different activities. You want to harness your energy for impact and clearly share responsibilities for goals. When this budget is created, if somebody says, well, I think we should raise another $200,000 or whatever, where is it coming from? Go backwards, do the math. Doesn't come out of the sky. You'll have to work the prospect base. Of course, lead by example. That, as a board member, is a key attribute. You want to respect donors, but you want to partner in bringing them into the fold. And again, I emphasize the thanking and the stewarding, because nothing is more important than that. It is the most important thing you can do. So in terms of the best practices of very successful fundraising boards, you as the leaders, you foster the process. That means don't sit here and say at a budget, well, why are we spending so much on fundraising? Or we shouldn't spend this, or should we spend that? You have to fund and allocate resources to do the job. Anybody in business knows that. Doesn't happen without appropriate resources. Stress, you have a collective agenda, not just in fundraising, but in where the organization is going. What is the most important thing CREA needs to do in 2021 to 2022? If I asked you that as a board member, what is the one thing any one of you would tell me is the most important thing CREA wants to accomplish on its agenda? Someone? Can you tell me? Can anybody tell me what the most important thing is? Oh, come on.
For me, I would, I have a kind of weird perspective because I'm just delivering programs. So I'm very program focused. But for me, an area that we could really work on, I don't know if it's the most important, is to get more young people involved and families involved. And for me, knowing, you know, I think we could do a better job at developing a more active community of local young families that wouldn't necessarily currently elicit much donation money, but would generate a lot of enthusiasm and community and support around CREA and what we do, and capitalize on all the kids and families that go to summer camp and enjoy the school programs. So I think that's one issue, is that the bulk, and I don't really know these facts at all, but the bulk, the majority, I think, of our programming is affecting kids and young people. And they're not, in my mind, as active as we could be in terms of the donors.
Sarah, that is absolutely perfect, because those are the first two levels on the pyramid. That's just what we're talking about. Great smile. In that cycle of what do we want to do? We want to reach out, we want to educate and communicate. And that is, you just described the pipeline, which is exactly what the organization needs to do. While at the same time, for those friends of ours that are established and know a little bit about us, we steward them. Bringing people into the fold, into the pipeline, is exactly what we want to do. And I know Nancy will agree on this one. We would make calls together. We'd say, give us a program officer. They don't want to talk to a fundraiser. They want to know what's going on with the programming. And you're in a key position as a face of the organization, because you're interacting with these people, to recruit them. And you use the correct term, recruit them, and get them engaged at a different level. Now, what would really be helpful, I think, for the organization is, as you describe that, what would be some tactics that you might see, because you interact with these folks, that would bring them closer into the organization?
I think it's things we don't currently do, and I'm not particularly good at, but Jenny's really good at the Facebook world. I think, we don't hold programs. I liked the term you used, the friend raiser, or the fundraiser. I think,
friend first.
yeah, we could do more in that regard. It would take time. It would take dedicated staff time, and we would have to not just do it as an afterthought, or, oh, can we squeeze in one family program, but to actually have, it would take a while to figure out what types of events people want to come to, what makes them come. Or if it's not an actual event, maybe it's another way that we can help people connect and rally around CREA and the topics and the issues, even if they're not attending in person. I'm not sure, but it will take a lot of thinking and time dedication that currently we don't do. At least I don't do.
Jenny, did you want to comment on that?
Sure. So one thing piggybacking on that was exactly who I had on my list as far as people to reach out to that are not currently involved but are associated with CREA, is we kind of have this incredible group of camp families that also attend our programs within the schools that we kind of just leave hanging the rest of the year. And the one thing that I think of with them is, and listening to you, is having those personal phone calls to ask them, a lot of them pay a lot of money to have their kids come to camp for the summer. And they're very well connected locally, and asking them what they want to see and what sort of programs would work for their families. And then that leading into a greater sort of giving conversation down the road. But that seems like an untapped resource currently.
Jenny, do we do an exit survey to camper families?
We do, yes. And the report on that is coming to the board in October.
And does that ever have a section, or does it include things that are desired, or things that are what we call the want list, the wish list?
Yes, we kind of leave it open to them. And then I do give some prompts, other camp sessions they'd be interested in, vacation camps or days, not specific program wise, but leaving it open for suggestions. But probably, seeing how many people actually responded to that out of our population of camp families, it would be great to follow up with some of the families that came for longer periods of time.
Whoops, she just blinked out. Nance, unmute yourself. Little red button.
Yeah. I'm also wondering if, in terms of staying connected with these very important group of people throughout the year, if we've thought about doing any kind of reunion gatherings or, something just to get the folks together and get them excited, as a group again together. And as you said, to not leave them hanging for, 9 months and then making a full-on, approach in the beginning of the summer. I think there are ways that we can keep people connected and excited, even if they're not here on campus.
Do we ever ask these a question about them? And this goes to Tim as a parent of children who are attending. Do the families see themselves as a collective cluster of the organization? Do they have a degree of cohesiveness themselves? Sarah says this. Jenny's
I would
not
say
sure.
no.
Tim? Oh,
I don't think so, no.
okay.
And Sue,
I-
Sue has had her hand up. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that we saw.
Well, it's a different topic in terms of people to cultivate. So I was waiting till this conversation was over around the younger families. So.
All right. Both Jenny, Sarah, and Nance all mentioned leave them hanging. There's nothing worse than having episodic cultivation. The idea of cultivating someone and stewarding them is something you want to keep doing. Even if you cannot do it at full throttle, you want to keep doing that during the course of the year. Do we ever check in with these families to say at the end of, say, the academic first semester, just a couple of quick questions? How's Samantha doing? How's Jason doing? Have they enjoyed science this year? Are they learning more about the environment? What as a parent do you see from their CREA experience being evidenced in their academic training? To me, that would be a real tip for a parent to engage them to say, oh, let me think about that. Samantha took a totally different look at this than she might have before, showing that what they learned not only had an impact, but began a whole new pathway for what we would call the way to learn, or the learning process.
I had a thought, and I don't know whether we've done this. If Sarah and Carrie, during the year in school, do you know which students that you work with in the classes have been campers?
We could find out that information, but generally no, unless we recognize them.
That might be an interesting thing to begin to try to capture. And the other thing I was thinking is that I don't know this for sure. We have one of our board members is one of the principals of a local elementary school, very active. And when I think about young families and increasing membership, and this is a cohort that we've been talking about for some time, many of them are working 2 jobs or do shift work. And if we can make a reunion at a school and have a pizza dinner or something, and then some kind of activity sort of in situ, like on the school grounds, that kind of thing. The easier that we can make it for people to come together as families, the better. So I'm all for trying to do something like this.
In terms of looking at families, do you feel, given the socioeconomics of the area, that is a potential? Is there capacity within families to do a little bit more, say, than send their child to camp? I don't know your demographics well enough to comment on that. Ladies?
I'd say yes. I think one of the kind of funny divides we have is that during summer camp, which is not super expensive related to other summer camps, but it's expensive to go to summer camp. There's a different demographic of kids that attend summer camp versus in school, we reach everybody. And so sometimes the stories that come out of school, which we're not allowed to communicate with families, but we're not allowed to communicate through teachers. So we can get really great stories of the impact we're having in schools. But that's not going to be the money source as much as I think the camp families would tend to be the more well-off parents. And I don't know if Jenny, you agree or.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. I think, looking at camp this past summer, we definitely have the people that can afford to send their children to camp for multiple weeks. We had families driving all the way from Cape Elizabeth to come up to camp. But we also have kids that, luckily were on full scholarships, or that their grandparents had paid for them to come, and maybe they would have never had that opportunity. So I definitely would say that the camp parents and families have some definite potential to give, whether it's scholarships and then maybe moving into other things, or a collective scholarship donation.
And as a question both to all of you and Caroline, in terms of these families, do we identify them by, when we do ask them either for a membership or an annual gift of some time, as a camper family, or do we just generically throw them in with everybody else? Do we isolate and bring that experience right back to life with great stories and share with them, here was the benefit, we loved having your children here, can you continue to help us in different ways? I mean, that has got to be, that speaks to being donor-centric. What is their interest? Focus on their interest, and that is where you begin to see the reciprocity. Tim, any other thoughts as the parent of a camper here, that things that would cue you? I mean, you're already in our queue, but what else might cue other parents?
Well, I do have thoughts, and I'd like to come back to them, but I also want to give Sue a chance. She's been raising her hand over there to to speak first, and I think it's going to relate to another constituency, as she was saying.
Okay, so the two, Sue and Susan, have both raised their hands. So I think Sue was first up in my left-hand corner. What was your question, Sue?
Well, I did want to comment on the demographics of SAD 75, which is Topsham, and it's around 40% free and reduced lunch. So I think it's important to know, this is not a wealthy area. And Brunswick is, I know I gave this information to folks that I'm not, maybe Caroline can remember, but it's into the 30s in Brunswick. I think Brunswick's changed a little bit, but anyway, that's just a comment on families' means.
In terms of means, Jenny and Sarah both mentioned often grandparents will underwrite the cost of the tuition for camp. Are grandparents in those same categories, or do you think grandparents may be positioned a little differently? Anyone?
I know a lot of, well, it seems like quite a few of the grandparents that are able to fund their campers or their grandchildren to come are also Highland Green residents.
Right.
Where the camper will, they'll come stay with their grandparents for a few weeks, and they will have them come to camp for that time. So I hate to generalize, but I think that, that they could definitely, add to donations.
Which really kind of leads me to what I wanted to ask about before. When I moved to Highland Green almost 4 years ago, I don't think I was here a month when a CREA board member and Highland Green resident reached out and really persisted in getting my husband and I to go on a walk. It was the middle of the winter. And I know COVID has certainly impacted things, and I'm going to rely on those who live in Highland Green longer than I have, but could it be a regular practice to not only just reach out to new residents, but to have almost an elevator speech or something that could really be engaging, because the people here, it's your backyard, and people here do have, not everybody's rich who lives here, like I'm not, but I mean, there are people here that have a fair amount of money as well. Anyway, so my question is really around how targeted have we been to reaching out to new residents? Because we have had a ton of new residents over the past year and a half. And I know we're doing the thing next week but anyway.
But I would say yes, yes, and yes to everything you just suggested.
Okay.
And dovetailing on what Sue said, I think, perhaps if we, and I don't know that this is not possible, I would assume that it is, that we could work with, pardon me, the marketing department of Highland Green to,
Yes.
work ourselves into the introduction to.
I had the exact same thought, Nancy, the
Yeah.
exact same thought.
Yeah, I think that would be the way to do it, be the easiest way. Least intrusive and most natural, I think. Yeah.
Susan, I know you had a question, please.
Well, no, not a question, but a few thoughts. I love that the first suggestion came from Sarah and then Jenny chiming in. I think I have viewed our various programs as somewhat segmented. And unfortunately, I think they sometimes function that way. But the more we can see them all as part of a community of these concentric circles, when we start talking about campers, that's a nifty little universe. But you don't just have campers. You have those various ages, you have their parents, you have their grandparents, and you have CITs. Now, CITs have a heck of an experience. Now, I learned something today, which I think from Sarah saying that programming as we do it now in the schools and camps started in something like 2007. I don't know, but we have some years of experience with CITs who have gone on to do interesting things. And when Sarah suggested, to get more young families, young people and young families with children involved in CREA, such a great idea. But that thing about once you get them involved, to whatever extent, let's not lose them. It takes, as you described it so beautifully, communication and cultivation to sort of keep that relational link. And we're not going to do it with everybody, but, to be able to start doing that. Now, so there's the campers, beautifully described that the community of students in the schools is quite a different group. Now, when I was hearing Sarah talk about the students, and thank you, Sue, for mentioning that, the community that we reach is a really diverse community economically. We reach everybody in the schools. And I think to some people that might be really important. Now, the odd thing about how we were founded is that we have this, where we live in the backyard of Highland Green, which, okay, you don't have to call it a rich community, but it is a community of means. Now, I'm so glad you mentioned Penelope Burke, because she meant a lot to me. And I wonder, if we could somehow do a little bit of a Penelope Burke type study with Highland Green residents. Highland Green is a very interesting community. Is it part of Topsham? Sure, it is geographically, but do the majority of Highland Green residents consider themselves community members? Are they concerned about the quality of the schools? Are they, I would think the more they know, some of them at least, the more they know about what CREA is doing in the schools, that could be an investment opportunity right there. Maybe some of those parents of those students in the schools who are on free and reduced lunch can't in any way invest in CREA. But if CREA is helping those students to become better stewards and better citizens, I would think Highland Green residents would want to invest in that. But one of the challenges, I just keep having this warning and going off. It's like we operate at such a stretched capacity that it's difficult to envision how we can do more. And I'm talking not about staff, but I'm also thinking about board, because most board members invest quite a lot of time in CREA, but that's a whole other topic. I'll drop that one.
What about, Susan, if some of, I've tried to take notes. I'm assuming Caroline is probably scribing away in there as well. She's a copious note taker. What about if we could pluck 2 or 3 of these things out and streamline it and refine it a little bit as tactics that are applicable? Every organization has different tactics and pathways that they can reach people. You have all just made several suggestions, perhaps prioritizing them, trying to streamline them, and maybe instead of everybody owning all of it, maybe one person owns a little piece, another person owns another piece, or maybe you have a partnership where, say, Ellen and Susan own one piece of it. I think there are many different ways to approach this. I'm not sure of how cohesive you are as a board, whether you interact independently of having board meetings convened, or you respond to what I would call the conductor of the symphony, Caroline. Part of the staff's job is not only to show just what Sarah and Jenny displayed as thoughts, or bring from the foot up to the head what is going on and how we can make connections. But the job of the executive director, along with staff, is to orchestrate opportunities for all of you to best fulfill your roles. And some of these may be very modest. Every single thing that's come out is a great idea. Again, I would stress, given how stretched you are, the limited capacity, but you are all talking about exactly what that circular cycle slide showed: communicating, creating awareness, learning what people want, and sharing. How well do you, Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah. Just going back to Highland Green, one of the tension's not the right word, but one of the tensions we always have to deal with is the preserve isn't CREA and CREA isn't the preserve. And we try to make that distinction that CREA is an educational program. One of the easiest thing, not easiest, but a kind of a selfish thing to put on Highland Green residents is that the existence of the preserve enhances the values of all our homes. That's kind of a nice one to play on, but that isn't CREA. And we have to figure out how to say you've got the preserve around you that's enhancing the value of your home, but CREA, we do this educational program and that also enhances the value of your home. And I haven't quite figured out how to do that one yet, because every time I mention the preserve, we say, well, CREA is not the preserve, and we're very focused on making sure people don't see it that way. And I think we have to do it the other way, trying to get people to see the coordination between the two. Just one more quick comment, getting ready for next Tuesday's event. And this year alone, through July, we've had a 10% turnover of people in Highland Green. That's like 20 new people or units since January 1st. It's people who know nothing about us really, because we haven't been able to communicate with them yet because of COVID. So I don't know how to
Well, question back to you on that. what you see as a gap. Do you not, do all of you not see CREA as a steward of the land, not the owner, but as someone who provides an understanding, someone who stewards it, enhances what we know about it? Is that not a pathway into the connection?
We don't necessarily, we're not necessarily stewards of the land. The land trust obviously is. We do around the ecology center, we're kind of the stewards of that. We have to try to make that connection, well, because it's, one of the things we were always sold when you come to Highland Green is you got this preserve around you and it really enhances the value of your home. And it does. I mean, it's true. But that's not CREA. And we have to figure out how to be able to say that to people.
So I have a question for Ellen, because I know she doesn't live, I'm sorry, Tim, I was just going to go to Ellen for a minute. You do not live here. How do you ascertain the value of not having a vested interest in this property? How do you ascertain the value?
Well, I wanted to say, I think, while technically Bob is right, and I think the land trust holds the easement on the property, and the owner of the property is, somebody else. So there are technical differences, but CREA, CREA's programming sprang from the desire to be good stewards of the preserve, and for people to appreciate and learn from the land that has been preserved. So I think I feel as if where we are physically located with the ecology center springs from sort of our natural juices, if you will, spring from the preserve to inform the programming that we do. Our priority, if you will, and it's in our mission statement, is to educate people about the world around them. And we use the preserve and have used the preserve as our exemplar, our outdoor classroom. So it's the programming and the staff involved in the programming that requires the support. I mean, that's where the money goes, if you will. But I understand that people at Highland Green and elsewhere get confused about the connection between CREA and the land trust, but it is such a special place out of which we work. That's part of what has always spoken to me.
Well, it's a living laboratory. It's a living
Yes.
laboratory. I'm just thinking of organizations that, obviously not in Maine, but that I have done projects with in Massachusetts, in the Neponset River watershed, Connecticut River Museum, Charles River watershed. I've never run into that idea that although a river flows through many towns, who literally owns it, and the separation and that distinction. It's always viewed more as that is the resource, that's the environment, that belongs to all of us. And I would hope that encompassing feeling might be something we could begin to integrate in our communication. Jan, did you have another question or a comment?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up on Bob's comments about Highland Green. I think a lot of residents feel that, and I think Highland Green marketing plays into it, that CREA is just an accessory. It's another amenity that comes with home ownership there. And I think we need to continually try to explain that that's not quite the case, that we're a separate organization with a different mission. Another thing is about the timing of asking new residents. They've just put down a chunk of money and done decorating and everything else. When is the best time for CREA to approach a new resident?
Informationally, it varies early on in their residency, but I don't think you should be hitting people up when you're trying to explain who you are for money immediately. So
Right.
another reason why the type of activity with the Rockers, the concert, is a good one, because hopefully the messaging of what CREA shares and you all share that evening with whoever you interact with does speak to the clarity of some of these points and the importance of it, and does demonstrate the value. I mean, do you, for those of you that are residents, I mean, obviously you're more involved, but how many people do you think really know that we actually not only have a camp, but we also go into the school systems? Jenny, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, but is that, can I just throw that out as a question? Show of hands, how many residents do you think actually know what CREA really does on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think, some do, obviously, and they know there's a camp because there's traffic. They see that problem.
Not the most positive thing.
Yeah, but I think, Jan hit the nail on the head, that the marketing people at Highland Green say this is an amenity and it's going to increase the value of your home. And I think that sets a mindset for people that, someone else is paying for it. It's coming out of the Highland Green budget. It's coming out of John Wazalewski's money.
That's right. Also, the signage on the roads, and I've commented this, I've mentioned this to the last Highland Green management person. It says Highland Green and directions here, there, and everywhere, and it says Ecology Center. Well, it should say CREA Ecology Center, at least to plant in people's minds that, hey, that's the Ecology Center is not one of your amenities.
Get that logo on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just to even ask if we can put our stickers on those signs.
I can just say that when I was being, wooed to move here, CREA was never mentioned. It was just, there's trails. And I was led to believe that dogs could go on those trails, which is also another it's just a little glitch, because there are a number of people that I know, a lot of people have dogs here. And so it's just a little point that I think people need to be aware of. People are not happy that they can't bring their dogs on the trail. And so we have to kind of navigate that a little bit, because I didn't know that until I got here.
And I agree with you. We didn't either. But again, I think this is an opportunity for, for us to get more involved with the Highland Green marketing department and be able to speak for ourselves in terms of what CREA is and how it adds value to our living environment and that of the community as well.
Has John Leahy been invited to the event next Tuesday?
Don't know.
That might be a good
Oh,
opportunity.
yeah, we did invite his new associate. Remember, she came to the Ecology Center while we're having the meeting about the 14th. And
Julie?
Yeah, we mentioned it to her.
Okay, and just one other thought. We did a survey, and you don't always get the greatest response rate on surveys, but one of the comments that came back was that the perception was that CREA had a lot of money, because it's located next to Highland Green, and B, because the quality of our newsletters and other communications was so high that people just assumed that we were rolling in money. So just a thought there. I don't think we ought to cheapen up our communications at all, but that perception was out there.
A lot of your comments, to me, being on the outside, cry to the need for what I would call a snapshot, a fact sheet, something that is or it could be a trifold pamphlet, something that is very concise, condensed, but is very clear, not only numerically, but in terms of service component, the who, the what, a little bit of the numbers, a little bit of the euphoria and the altruism, but something that theoretically would go into or be sent to every new resident and every resident with a welcome letter. And I can't imagine with a list of 200 houses that would be that difficult over the course of a year to do. I don't know what, I've seen some general collateral. I know the quality, I would agree with Jan, the quality of your work is outstanding. Do not lower the quality, because when quality gets lowered, let me tell you, it just goes right in the freaking basket. So you want to keep the quality good. Tim, did you have another question? Because I thought I saw your hand go up. I'm sorry.
I did, but it's something that's been going through my head throughout this entire thread of discussion, and I'm not sure if it's built on ignorance or not. So forgive me if it is. I get the impression we've been talking about, our present constituencies and broadening those, right? So there's the whole Highland Green group. There's all the families and kids who are at the schools and in the camps. And there's kind of this donut hole in between. It seems to me that a lot of people who are, and this is where the ignorance comes in, I get the perception that there are families of school-age kids who are members because their kids are getting this direct value. And then, oh, my kid is aged out and I no longer have to support this group anymore until, I retire, and then I can kind of decide what to do. And it seems to me that there is not this sort of feeling of paying it forward. When we talk about stewarding the preserve, it's like what we're doing is developing the future stewards, of our natural world. And so it's important to appeal to what people value and how it connects with our mission, so that even if it's not directly impacting their family, it's the difference they're making in the world. That's just kind of what's been going on through my head.
And that's what good communication ought to do with everyone. And I think that is a challenge for all organizations, how succinctly, how clearly, how impactfully you can communicate your message, but have a more universal appeal, and it is pay it forward. And perhaps that's something after today's conversation, people step back and look at our beautiful collateral and say, okay, well, here's an opportunity to tweak this, here's an opportunity to but we
Diane, I don't know if it's just me, but I can hardly hear you now.
Is that better?
No, it's still the,
What happened?
I don't know.
Diane, did you put a piece of paper over the laptop?
I moved a piece of paper.
there you go.
That's better. That's better.
Yep, following up on
Good call, Jenny.
Tim's comment, we are talking, we have been talking about kind of the natural local constituencies, the kids and the families in Highland Green. But one thing I've been thinking of, and I think Ellen knows what I'm going to talk about, is somebody who benefits from the stewards, or potentially will benefit from the stewards that we're training. And I'm particularly thinking about the aquaculture and oyster culture business in the immediate area, which is just exploded. And we've been talking about how, I think Diane, I think Caroline had mentioned, Diane, that said this wasn't a good year to really hit businesses up because of everything that's going on. But as we get out of this, hopefully, that whole business area of aquaculture right off our waters is enormous. And to make those people realize that we're training the stewards of their businesses is something I want to begin to look at.
And I would say that's one of your concentric rings on the circle. And typically when we look at, I had noticed in the publications that there were sponsors. I think one of the things, once you refine your case and have it be impactful enough with individuals, then it's easier to transition with vendors, because you need a very straightforward, quick, definitive strategy, or you'll never get their attention, because it's very different. It's a very different headset than the headset that individuals wear, but it is absolutely a spot for continued growth potential in the long run. And it will depend. Obviously, all businesses We know that some businesses have just bottomed out while others have soared. It's been very polarized as to who's succeeded and who hasn't in the pandemic. But clearly, if you know of growth industries, you will see on that exercise at the end of this session that vendors are listed as a potential constituency. I know there are some that my understanding is some of the ones that are currently engaged were brought in by peers, that it was more of a peer network than it was going out and really telling the story. So I think we should move just a little bit on right now, because what we're all talking about are what I think are different opportunities for your organization, which are terrific. And hopefully some of these, again, the need to prioritize when you're lean is critical, because the need to plan when you're lean is the only way to succeed. And one of the ways to do that is to hone through some of these and say, okay, here's what is a quick return on investment, what's a long-term activity for investment return, and then what is our future? How do we strengthen ourselves to move from point A to point D, but not lose A, B, and C in the process? So let's shift to this next slide, because I'm sure we'll have a lot more comments and questions, which we welcome. But I think one of the things that's important, and you've all talked around it, is exploring, what are we asking you to do? If Nancy and I were your fundraising cheerleaders, what would we be saying here as the professionals? And we would be saying, just as you've started to create this mosaic on this board today, is that you have to decide how you're going to team and partner with both peers and staff. I mentioned that earlier with some of the things that may be useful that the staff can give you, many of which I've jotted down, but what is one or two things that your expertise, you all have expertise in a different way and talents in a different way. What is one or two things that you could act on and partner? The other, Bob just mentioned, the connection of CREA to your own circle, perhaps beyond the Highland Green, which is clearly an obvious, but yet not without challenge. I also, again, urge you, you've got many, many good ideas, but you have to adhere to a course of action. Some of the most wonderful thoughts, objectives, and goals in fundraising just get tossed to the wayside or glossed over because no one can do all of it. You have to be selective in this business. Even if you only begin with one or two things per year, it's better to complete those and do it well and show excellence and efficacy than to do 10 things by the seat of your pants. And that's a very important distinction in a nascent fundraising adventure. Again, being our best ambassador, and you are a voice and face for CREA to amplify Caroline, Jenny, Sarah, Andrea, but you have to do it knowledgeably. And that's when I just mentioned that little spot fact sheet. If I asked anyone obviously forget last year because of the pandemic, if I asked anybody, was camp sold out? What was the enrollment for camp this year? Could you tell me that? Could somebody tell me how many students per year CREA reaches in its external school program, or how many communities we serve? Those are numbers that could resonate with someone who wants to think about paying it forward, as Tim said, putting it into context for we're training the next generation of caretakers for our earth and this land, which today we know you're in an organization with a mission that has so risen to the radar of the general population. This is a wonderful time to be doing this. I mean, think about 30 or 40 years if you were going and trying to do the speed, like pushing a boulder uphill. So you as an organization, collectively, but individually, need to have a good, what I would call a commanding knowledge of what's going on internally. And I don't mean dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but if I was at that concert and I said, gee, Jan, well, how many students a year benefit from CREA? I might be blown out of the water by that answer, but I would expect as a board member, you'd have a little handle on data. And again, I'm not asking to be digging deep, deep down, but Sue mentioned 30%, 40% of the children are on lunch programs. Well, we all know what that means. The interpretation of that is the socio-demographic. We're getting to those kids. This is a major facet and asset. Nancy.
I just wanted to mention that dovetailing on what you were saying before, Diane, about, you know, a fact sheet about CREA, accompanying that, very importantly, and going directly to what you said, would be a CREA by the numbers, which will bring up very quickly how many students, you know, we reach, how many campers, you know, and that's something that can be annually updated to reflect current numbers and be very powerful in terms of a tool in the impact in the community.
We have a one-page, 2 sides of one-page annual report, which has a lot of that, which is gorgeous, that Jenny put together, which is updated. So we have a lot of those figures ready.
That's great.
So I used a lot of that information 2 weeks ago when I was staffing the ecology center. And my wife said I didn't stop talking as people came in, because I could just go on. And having all those facts without burdening people too much, I thought was, I got to people. And I got to tell you, you know, and we've talked, Ellen, and sort of sent an email about this, taking the opportunity to staff the ecology center, you know, once or twice a year. And I met 9 people that day. And, you know, it was 9 people, none of whom knew nothing about us. They'd never been there before. And, you know, one group was with their family, but everybody else was adults. And I had a lot of information. And I had actually, the week before, I had attended the talk on what the land was like, around the ecology center, the history of the area. And I drew a lot of that information in too. And it was kind of fascinating to me to learn all this stuff and to be able to kind of impart it. So, you know, you're right. The annual report gave me a lot of information. And I tell you, if you may not get a lot of people on a Sunday, but the people you get, you have them. You know, so I really kind of push people to take the opportunity to be there at least one Sunday, because it gives you a chance to talk to people and you have them as a captive audience.
And Bob, I want to springboard off of 3 important points you just made. One, if I was on your board, or if I was your executive director, part of the board description would be at least once a season, you do a Sunday 12 to 2. I was shocked in walking at how little time this is open. I thought it's such an advantage. It's a pedestrian highway out there, constantly people walking by. It's a great opportunity to draw people in, but clearly 12 to 2 one day a week is tough. Maybe you can all do one Sunday or one different day a month that you choose, that you think you have better foot traffic, but at least once or twice a year, even where there's so many of you, if you took it, you'd be able to cover a lot of ground. That's one point. The other point is having the knowledge from the annual report and being able to utilize that knowledge with sharing it with donors so they can understand it, or just prospective friends so they can understand it, but giving enough to get them hungry and interested. It's a little bit your case for support, which is what this slide talks about, why communication is so important. The other aspect that Bob mentioned is you've got them captive. How do you harvest that captivity? Do you get their names? Do you have a sign-up sheet? Do you ask people for their email? Having people do a walkthrough is wonderful, but you want to continue to bring them into the fold if it's at all possible. Were they just people visiting? Did they pop in? Were they tourists? That is something that's very important. Maybe they're grandparents, other parents, but identifying who those people are and trying to get the more, what I would consider a stable bridge to connecting with them is important. And then again, that goes to, if you really made a connection, Bob, is there a way for you to follow up with them? Can you share collateral with them? Can you invite them to something? Can you get them to sign up for your wonderful newsletters and drive them to your website? These are all ways that you grab that string and hold on when you're trying to bring people into your organization and then elevate them up the pyramid. We started with Caroline's concern about communication. I can't say enough how important good quality collateral and communication is, because it allows you to do your job better, and that there's probably no one you spoke to, Bob, that didn't realize how committed you were and how much you cared about the organization after meeting with you on Sunday. But,
and the one thing, Caroline, I think she got this from you, is that in that time period when you have people, the ask is at the end.
there is no ask when it's an introduction.
Right. Yeah. What I was doing was talking about who we are, and that kind of at the end saying, well, here's our sign up sheet. If I felt good enough, I'd maybe give them the membership card, the membership envelope, to see what I could do with them. But also kind of thinking on your feet with people. There was one woman who was, she was dealing with she was taking care of a 5-year-old, kind of a nanny kind of thing. And she said, I'm looking for stuff. I came here because I was looking for stuff to do at home with this person. And then, I immediately gave her the sheet that shows all the at-home stuff to do. So I've, got her into hopefully going online because it had all the URLs for all the work that she could do with the kids at home.
Toolbox, and that's the way that you start to interest people. That's that whole bottom tier of the pyramid. So again, you can see why communication is a best practice in fund development, and how important it is to feel that you can intelligently, knowledgeably, and comfortably communicate what the organization does. And that brings us right back to this cycle again. I think you're all starting to understand and feel comfortable with this is the way it happens. And the way it happens is through your own outreach, being a liaison, just as you've all talked about, introducing people to your staff. You have a very talented staff. What are opportunities that the staff, and again, the COVID restrictions are tough, but what is the next time there may be something? A lot of people around here during the day, maybe there's a certain program that Andrea or Sarah or Jenny is doing that could be done in a way either out on the deck or somewhere where other people could come and observe. Call that the mission moment. And it's so important, and it really helps. We just talked about knowing the facts. If you have that annual report, if you feel it's too dense, drill it down, make it a one-pager, or commit some of it yourself so you can be able to do it. One of the things that Nancy and I have always put forward when we're working with the board is try to introduce a couple of new people to the organization every year. And it may not be that you get them 24/7, but you may be able to get them to 1 or 2 events, or just, you have such a beautiful opportunity. You're not talking about a dentist tower or a medical school where you can't take people in. Bring them for a walk. I mean, what easier way is there to show what you do here? You have a living laboratory. Bring them for a walk and say, join me, just take a walk, go down into the building. Introducing people, I think, in that way that may not be in Highland Green is effective, or those that may be in Highland Green is very effective. I think one of the things that we want to talk about is to get ways that you can connect, the steps you can take. And you have some great opportunities coming up. You've got this, the concert, which is a collaborative. Hopefully the content of that activity, I know there will be a speaking portion, will allow for it, but think of your own speaking opportunities. What do you want to tell, or what do you want to ask, better yet, of that one person you've been thinking about that you would like to bring into the organization? What, if you see them there, great. We've asked that all the staff who attend and the board members who attend wear identifications, that you wear your name tags. I don't know if you can see this, if I'm doing that in the right place or not with the camera, but you wear your name tag so people know who you are. It's a lot easier for people to ask questions when you're already advertising who you are. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a very positive way. That is a very easy way to break the ice. One of the things that we know happened over the summer was the annual meeting. There could be opportunities for a former board meeting or different gatherings. I know there's some consideration of having a Highland Green welcome meeting in the fall. It might happen in October or November. That is a great way because it's a very intimate environment in which you can react to and interact with folks. Now, when Bob mentioned connecting with them, if you can get any personal communication with individuals, if you're chatting with them, a great way to say, gee, I'd love your email, or, oh, do you live on Sycamore, or do you live on Sparrow? I'd like to drop something off or send you some information. Maybe you send them your annual report and write a personal note on it. Great to hear some more information about us. And maybe at some point we can take a nice walk, or you would come down to the ecology center when it's open. And always thanking people for whatever engagement it is they're investing in, whether they're at this concert, thank them. And when you see them the next day, if you see them the next day, gee, it was great of you to join us. Did you have any more questions about CREA? We'd love to share more information. Don't be shy about saying you're a board member or a volunteer. I think that's sometimes people feel, oh, am I putting myself out there or putting myself being too pushy? I think what you want to make sure is that you let people know the resource. This is the whole key. Nancy, you want to make a comment? Nancy?
It's just your voice, I'm sorry, again, is really low. I don't know what.
I have nothing near it now. I'm sorry. I know Caroline mentioned there may be some technical speaker issues. I basically feel like I'm screaming at you all.
Yeah.
The mic is over here. So just, oh, geez. Oh, oops, sorry. Should move that. That will come back in a minute. There we go. It'll come back. But you're being filmed from here and the mic is here. So talk more this way.
Okay.
That will come back in a minute. Keep talking.
Hold on, folks. Here we go. God, don't we all love technology, right?
Let you work from that.
Okay, so I can continue to work from this smaller screen. I don't know if it will advance it. Sure it will. Okay, great.
There you go. You're back.
I think we lost the share.
You lost the share?
Yeah.
Hold on, please.
So just
Which one do you want me to use?
share screen,
We're all just feeling so happy it's not us
no screen.
having to figure that out.
There we go.
There,
Okay.
okay.
They're seeing, you can slide this over. There you go.
Great. Okay, sorry about that, folks. So these are some of the ways we would say scaling the pyramid that you all as board members could engage in. And a lot of it is simple stuff. This isn't saying go out and ask somebody for $1 million. We're talking about if you have great communications, not everybody is on your mailing list. Get a little packet of what you think are the best communications from Caroline. Share it with somebody, put it in their mailbox, put a little note on it saying, hey, I thought you might be interested in this. That is a wonderful way to begin to orient people to what it is your organization does. I think the other thing that you can do is to think about your individual capacity as a listener. how you share the impact of someone's gift, how you perceive the impact of your own commitment and your own gift. This is very important. When you have an opportunity to have a meeting, and a meeting doesn't mean sitting down and orchestrating a dinner. It could mean a walk. It could mean a cup of coffee together. It could mean sitting on someone's porch. It could be Caroline says, oh, gee, I'm going to be chatting to this person. Could you stop by the center? I'd love to have you join me as a board member. Those are very good avenues to begin to break in, to get to know people. Hosting the opportunities we've mentioned. Have you observed camp? Invite someone to do it with you. Have you participated in a lecture or walk? Host them. Ask them just to come. All they can say is, no, I'm not interested. And you know what? That's better to know than not know, because then you are not wasting your time. You always want to clarify a person's position by that listening momentum and get their permission for more or less. And people will be very honest with you and let you know that. That's a good thing about this business. There's a lot of rejection, but it helps you sort out your priorities. And I think anything that you do, it should be personalized. If there's someone that you know and either a communication is going out, it may be a member renewal, it may be a solicitation. What you want to do is put your own John Hancock on it, put a note on it saying, we really appreciate what you've done in the past. I hope you'll continue with me to partner in supporting CREA. These are all small things that do not require any high intense skill or any kind of rejection or any kind of direct ask. These are all what we would consider the coaching or the appointments or the nuances of being a board member. Very, very important. So let's think a little bit about what your next steps are. We have the event coming up at Highland Green. Speak to those guests, make a connection wherever you can, send a follow-up. In every instance, even if you see someone's name and they don't give you a message, give you their email, if you know their name, help me out here, is there not a resident roster if given to residents? There is. So that name could be, you could check out their address. Thank you, Sue. Check out their address and you just send a little note. Thanks for joining us. It was really great to meet you. Would love to share more about CREA with you. Let me know if you're interested. Do you all have business cards as board members? Are there any blank business cards that they could write their name on?
Right. The ones that we have, I think, are blank.
Okay, great. Then absolutely, before you go to the event at the concert, the Rockers concert, take a dozen cards and write your own name on it with either a phone or an email, so that if somebody talks to you, you don't have to put them in the position. You can say, gee, here's my contact information. I'd love to connect with you further. Be prepared to do that as opposed to stumbling. Makes it a lot easier when you want to connect with someone. And this is all applicable to what's coming up as your year-end giving, which will be your annual renewal for either memberships again or for your traditional year-end appeal. I would say that Caroline had mentioned to us quite a while ago that last year she personalized quite a few letters and had a very different type of response. I would suggest not only that you join in personalizing letters, the ask still will probably go over the board chair and Caroline's name, but putting your own notes in, or if you're more comfortable, even following up with people by another note or an email or a call, all encouragements. These are all encouragements to get people to give by showing how much you care, because that's usually when they learn to care, when they see how much you care. Then after a gift comes in, again, cannot overemphasize the fact that whether the official acknowledgement comes, you don't need even to know the money amount. That's not important. It's that the person gave and you acknowledging that gift either with a call, a note, or anything else is critical. Once you get beyond the first of the year, you may want to think as an organization after post-year and giving or hosting a thank you event, contingent on all the outside factors, but I mean, this is a lovely spot here. If it was spring, to have a nice outside event for an hour or so, just thanking people and bringing them up to date on accomplishments. Maybe even having one of the wonderful educators you have do a demonstration. I think my favorite one is the one with the feet. I love that, with the owl and the feet and the talons. And again, stewarding a donor. If there's anyone you meet in the next set of events or in the course of your engagement here on the property, I would say pick one or two people. It's that same request I made of you back in August when we said, think of one or two people who you want to really bring through the steps and bring them along. I think that would be extremely, extremely helpful for all of you. And it would help you to understand on a one-on-one what the donor is looking for instead of this broad umbrella. Listen to one person's need. It will help you to build your own knowledge and be more comfortable with the donors as well. Okay, so those are what I would consider your most crucial next steps. And I think part of what we would like to see today for your takeaway is that all of this is a process. And it doesn't just happen, and you don't ask somebody for $1 million and it doesn't happen overnight. Those instances are so rare, it's unbelievable. We know that good fundraising and good stewardship, whether it's of the land or of donor relationships, begins with a first step, is not episodic, is continual and consistent. So think of this action as really cultivating a wonderful vineyard where we know that you have these tiny, fragile little grapes that really can't stand on their own. So we have to nurture them all the time. And we do that in a lot of ways because we want to always keep in our minds that fundraising, really strong development and philanthropy is relational. And a lot of it, 60% of it, 60 to 80% is working with the donor and understanding, not asking. That transactional part, that's right at the beginning. But your job as board members is to ease people in and teach them what you already know and help expand your own knowledge of the organization as well. And I just need to get this to, come on, no, don't want to do that. Okay, so what happens when we do this cultivation and steward process? Obviously, we see the fruits of our labor, beautiful fruits, things changing from being a sapling into being something that's wonderful and productive. And of course, I think if this was a little later in the day, we could all equate this of where I'm going here. But clearly, this process is so important to what this organization needs. And you are in the position to do it. So what you will find when you do that is you're going to have some very mutually gratifying endings with folks. And that's a great way to think about looking at your organization and creating, filling a need, not a need that's we're needy, but filling a very important need in the area in people's lives and things that and action that people are really looking at and taking on much more seriously. So that's sort of the direction we'd like to see you thinking. And I'd like to just close with a thought. I don't know if you'll know where this is from, but this is as relevant to me as the process of how long it takes to make a fine wine, to grow a seedling into a beautiful grape and to process it. Many people have in this audience, I know there are quite a few younger people, but I think a lot of us can resonate with some of our leaders in the past. You're probably all reading this. I don't know, you can go ahead and read it. It's amazing that these words are so pertinent to what this presentation was. I did not start out with these words. I have been reading a wonderful book called Hidden in Plain Sight, and it is a very interesting biography on Lady Bird Johnson, who is Claudia Alta Taylor Johnson. And she was a visionary environmentalist at a time when there was very little going on. Through the latter years of her life, she was able to see great accomplishments from from her impetus from way back in the 60s that people just blew her off with daffodils and beautification. That was not at all what she was about. She was a disciple of Lawrence Halpern. She was active until almost to before her death in environmental affairs, and highly regarded and received many accolades in the latter part of her life for the incredible things that she pursued and did. But her words are right out of this wonderful book that when I read it, it just flipped me out. But it was given to the noted naturalist and writer, Terry Tempest Williams, at a lecture in 2000. And these words are exactly, they're just as relevant today as they were when she said them. And clearly, she knew what had to be done, and she was able to do it over a very long period of time. So I'd like to leave you with that to think about, and maybe extract from that some of the tactics we've talked about, kick around some of these ideas, try to integrate some of this into your thinking and acting over the next month or two. I think it'd be a great help if you cohesively could come to a very tight agenda for your fund development program shortly. I think the longer you stretch this out and the more chatter, the worse it's going to be. You need to really hone in on 2 or 3 things and just focus on that, because you do have the limitations. The last thing on this is a worksheet for you moving forward. Can I please do this right? I did. This is your own take-home exercise, the constituency. On the left-hand panel, I put potentials, and some of them may be appropriate, some of them may not be appropriate. You may have many more to add, but what you can do is start to plug them into that set of circles to figure out who you may want to start thinking about working on, or who everyone should be working on right up front. And the last slide is sort of I considered a key code to how do you want to think about identifying people and qualifying them as a potential partner or a potential constituent. And you'll work through that on your own, but those highlighted green phrases are things you want to log in your head and say, okay, does this person have, can I check that box off? Can I check that box off? That will help you in identifying and working with people. I think we did okay on the time. I know we originally thought we were going to go 3 hours when we had a break time. We're at 11:19. Are there more questions or comments? I think we should wrap it up within the next 15 minutes, if possible. Or if you're ready to wrap it up now. I see something in the chat. I'm not sure what it is, but do we have other questions, other comments? Direct. What do you need? Bob. Ellen. Okay, we got 2 at once. Okay.
Okay. Somebody else can go first, whoever it was.
I would just like to thank you, Diane and Nancy too, for walking us through this so well, and giving us a chance to think together about next best steps. I just wanted to express our appreciation.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having us. This is a wonderful organization with great potential, and you're in the right spot right now. You want to be a cultural organization or arts organization right now in this world, so you are in the right place. Other questions, comments? Bob.
Okay. When Caroline had sent out the package for us to come up with questions or thoughts, she had sent donor lists for this year, and Caroline, it was 2 lists. One was 100 and over, and the other was below 100. Am I correct on that? So in the 100, below 100, there were 279 people, and over 100, there were 93. So it's about a third of the people over 100. 2 questions. One, is that ratio typical? That's one question. And the second question is, if the bulk of our 2/3 of our donors are under $100, are we not hitting the right amount? I mean, that kind of surprised me. I would have thought it'd be more over 100.
Bob, that doesn't surprise me in the least. We've worked with organizations that 75 to 85 and even 90% of their donors are under $100. And if you think of that 80-20 rule, 80% of the funds come from 20% of the people, and it's an even tighter cap right now. So I would say, in looking at who those donors are, clearly you'd like to work with people who are at that level of 100, but don't discount those people under, because that's why I gave you these questions, identify and qualify. There may be people on that list under 100 that you can check every one of those boxes and say, that person may need a lot more outreach or personal interaction. Maybe that is someone who we can bring into the fold. The other thing that's critical, bet you had a better year last year. You may have had quite a few new donors. Retaining the donors you have is essential. Donor retention in this country is at an all-time low. With new donors, it's always bad. You've got to work very, very hard to keep those people who are giving to you, continuing to give to you. And that is the stewardship aspect. I think, Susan, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to join others in thanking you. This has been very helpful. And I'm so glad that staff are all here participating in this, because that's why CREA does what it does, is the work that you do. And your encouragement for us to get together and have a meeting, and do some prioritizing, make some decisions. We have this wonderful opportunity next week, and there's no time between now and then to have a meeting, but we can piggyback on that wonderful event and what you've offered us today to kind of really put a plan in place to build something, because I'm very encouraged.
Good, and I hope these elementary steps will be just what you need to give you the encouragement to do that at that event.
Can I just piggyback on that? Sorry, I can't turn on my sound because we got a reverb. Just because we have so many board members present and the staff, and we have the event coming up next week, I wondered, Sarah and Carrie, could you give just a brief sort of update on where you're at with what you're working on for at least SAD 75 as a sort of talking point, if you feel, because you're doing some tangible stuff for them right now, right?
Yeah, so just an update right now, or an update at the event on Tuesday?
No, an update right now as a potential talking point for the staff, since there's no time to, I think you would deliver it much more effectively than I would. So just maybe share with the board what you and Carrie are working on right now in 2 minutes or less.
Yeah, got it. So I guess it's a carryover from last year, where the SAD 75, that's Topsham, Bowdoin, Bodenham, and Harpswell, we're working with the superintendent's office. So it means we're affecting all the K-5 students, and they're having us pretty much design science curriculum for we're creating science units for their elementary teachers to use for every classroom in K-5. And what we're doing, our focus is trying to get hands-on things in there. So to be learning about science, our two big focuses are hands-on and outdoors whenever possible. So instead of just learning from a book, which is what teachers in elementary school, a good talking point for you to know is that all this stuff is hands-on, because usually in elementary school, teachers are intimidated by teaching science. They don't feel confident, they don't feel comfortable. And so as a result of that, they resort to textbooks, and science education often is here, read a nonfiction text. So what we're trying to do is help it come back to life and give them all hands-on experiences where they explore the concept and then read a nonfiction text where they can be like, oh, that's what just happened, connect with a hands-on moment. So I'd say, Carrie, what else do you have to add to that? That's what we're doing right now, is designing 3 units, a fall of, parts of a fall, a winter, and a spring. So we're designing science units for all the K-5 teachers in those towns.
Amazing.
And along with that, we're going to do some professional development with those teachers. So we're going to go and meet with all the K2 teachers one day and all the 3-5 teachers another day and give them some pointers on how to do this style of education, because like Sarah said, they're not real comfortable with it. We did a similar program a couple years ago and the teachers all left really enthusiastic and excited to do it. So we found that if you give them the skills and then the thing to teach right away, it's much more likely that they'll take it and run with it. So we're excited to do that as well.
Harry, how many students will that impact? Just curious, how many students are in that cohort?
Oh.
That would be, so that's every elementary school in Topsham, Bowden, Bodenham, and Harpswell. We do have that number, just not off the top of our heads.
Well, make sure everybody has that number next week if you're going to
Yeah.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Powerful number. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it because I know how difficult it is in this medium to do this. So I really appreciate you making eye contact and all your comments and thoughts. Keep together, keep it going. You've got a great thing going here. Congratulations.
And I add my thanks, especially to everyone for, I know it's a chunk of time, everybody's busy, so thank you for all making the time, and you'll hear more later.
And I just wanted to add for the board members who can stay for a few minutes, we just wanted to go over very quickly our plans for the party on the 14th. It's coming up quickly. So if you can stay on, that would be great.
Okay, so staff, you're free to go.
You're free to go.
Thank you so much, Diane.
Yes, it was
Thank
just
Great to get to know all you. You got great ideas. Put them together and make them pop.
Caroline, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to share any camp numbers as takeaways for.
Oh, that would be a great opportunity. I mean, we'll probably try to put a short list together to send out to board members as well, but yes.
Yeah.
Share some camp numbers.
it would be great to have, some of the, like 2 or 3 bullets from Sarah and Carrie and Jenny and in writing, which would be, for those of us who have trouble retaining things, having it in writing would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have the numbers, Jenny, that would be great. Oh, hold
Looks
on,
like
Nancy?
Nancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm not a board member, but may I stay for the follow-up?
Absolutely.
So that I can hear what you want.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, sure. So we had 192 spots available this summer for campers, which was an increase from 144 from 2019. And all of those spots were filled. 50% of registrations happened on the first day we opened registration for camp. We had also 94% of families said they were very likely to recommend us. On a 1 to 10 scale, they rated us a 10. So that was a really good number to see. We also had 8 full scholarships for campers that were donated. 4 of those went to New.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
You frozen, girl.
Let's see if Jenny comes back. Give her a minute. Let me tell her that she's.
I can send you those in an email, so don't worry.
That'd be
about
great.
that. Yep.
You just froze. Did you realize that?
It didn't show on my end, but I'll send an email with the numbers. No worries.
Well, you can also just turn off your camera because that takes bandwidth and just
You want me
keep
to tell
telling
you
us all these great numbers.
Let's see. Stop video. Is that better? Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Maybe? Okay. All right. So quick numbers. We had 6 weeks of camp that we offered. We had 192 camper spots available. all of which filled. We had 50% of campers register the day registration opened, which was in March this year. We had 8 scholarships, full scholarships to camp, 4 of which were provided to new Mainers, and the other 4 were given to, we worked through the counselors within MSCD 75 and Brunswick schools to target the other students for those. We had 4 counselors this year and myself, so a team of 5. And we had 32 campers per week this year, which was up from only 24 a week in 2019.
Would you do
And
that again?
would I do that again?
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Okay. Gonna raise it to 36? I don't know, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's that's definitely a good discussion to have. But I have some other like good tangible information that I can send in an email, but that's just some quick numbers for everybody.
Jenny, was 32, we had a lot of rain, obviously, in July. Was 32 a workable number inside?
It was, yes. We only had about, I would say, 3 severe storms that rolled through the center. And when we did that, it was definitely like quiet, seated activities, and everyone had a focus during that time. So the space actually did work, because that was a big question for us.
Good.
If we were to increase that number at all, we'd need to look into other options.
Okay.
And Jenny, when you do put together those talking points, if there are any like great camper
Quotes?
parent testimonials or camper testimonials, if you could include those, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And rather than send it as an email, let's you and I talk, and we'll combine it with the school stuff, so we can just give board members one sheet of paper with the talking points on them.
Sure. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. Great. So, so we're getting ready to party on the 14th. And not that we can ever count on the weather being what anybody forecasts here. We're not supposed to get rain. It's supposed to be gray and a little cool. And I did get in touch with Barbara and I said, under what circumstances will you not play? And she said, rain. So given that they have, equipment with electricity and all that kind of stuff. So right now, of course, we'll know more the closer we get, but right now everything is on for the 14th. And we have, it's really a shot in the dark around numbers. I'm still thinking that maybe because Off Their Rockers, did they have a concert this week? I think they might have. We're not really sure how many people, we're not sure how many people are going to come, but I think 75 may be good to shoot for if we include board members and the band. Then, maybe 75 to 100. So starting, I guess the first thing to do to think about is kind of the flow of events. It's 4 to 6. And at 4 o'clock, I will get up and welcome everybody, and Caroline and too, and we'll quickly get into music. But we do want to say, on behalf of CREA and the board and our campers and parents and, all of that kind of stuff, how much we appreciate people coming out and just enjoying the space. And then during the band's break, there'll be more of a program that Caroline has nicely teased out for us, including the appearance of a resident beaver who is going to sort of appear before people's eyes with all kinds of explanations there for
why things work the way they do and adaptations and stuff. So that will be great fun. And some information about CREA and our volunteers and ways that people can connect with us and how we hope people will come to get to know us. I think we need to focus on this, and we've talked about this before, as a friend-raising event to welcome people that we know from Highland Green back. And if there are any new people, maybe we'll ask for them to raise their hands if they're new within the last 6 months or 12 months. What would they like to know about CREA and to find a board member? Caroline, do you want to say anything else about what we want to talk about during the break?
I think I had talked, Diane and Nancy had given me sort of the things to highlight, and it was sort of a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of numbers, about the impact of our programs, and naming all of the Highland Green residents that have supported our work, which is quite a long list. That's going to be 2 minutes right there, I think. And that's pretty much it. And dressing the beaver is going to be, probably 4 to 5 minutes, I think. And we'll probably
At least.
Yeah.
All the adaptations, it could be,
Could be hours.
Could be hours, right?
So I think we're shooting for like 15 minutes, I think.
Right.
Sue, does Off Their Rockers usually do about a 15-minute intermission?
Yeah, they can do whatever you want, but
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. So we want to look at, yep. Susan.
Just a thought, and maybe you've already talked about this. Unless Off the Rockers has such a fan base that people are going to stick through it to the bitter end, if there's a chance that there are some folks who might come and leave at the break, I would encourage them to have the break early and then have the second half a little bit longer. And I don't know how this fits with Highland Green. So Sue, tell me if I'm off base. I would love to see us be just a little bit, I think the beaver's tremendous, but I would love to see us be a little bit raucous. Like, Highland Green in the house, woohoo! And how many, have somebody from Highland Green who's on the board or a big supporter say something, be one of the talking heads briefly, and somehow bring out the enthusiasm of what Highland Green has been to CREA by somebody at Highland Green, so that we're whipping up. I'm suddenly getting the value of the word whip. Right? That you're whipping up the feeling of, if you're not a member and supporter of CREA, you need to be, you want to be, let's be, right? Let's all be supporters of CREA. And I think it's great to have Ellen open and Caroline, do information, but to have a Highland Green person sort of be the host for this thing, I think would be really great if we can do that. That's my 2 cents.
That would be great. I
Yeah.
think the question is, whether someone is, Anne and Lisa Durrell are not can't be there, they're away. So the question is whether that
I
leaves
wonder if we
Bob.
can get Ron. Ron is kind of the face of the ecology center,
Mhm.
the community.
How about Valerie?
Well, but everybody kind of knows Ron,
Yeah.
he's always down there. I mean, Valerie, everybody knows Valerie too. But everybody, everybody knows Ron, because if you're down there, the chances are you'll see him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice idea. And we could ask them to join us, both Valerie and Ron. It doesn't have to be, or you know, the Highland Green residents, A, on the board, and B, who've worked with us for a long time, to get people excited, and we can talk to them about that. I think that's a nifty idea. I really like that.
One other thing that actually Ann mentioned to me, to mention to us, and it's kind of a way of keeping people there. Do we want to do a 50-50 raffle?
Right, we've talked about that. It's fine with me if anybody wants to set that up. I'm all for it.
It
So
feels like it's too late to really organize that. I
Okay.
mean, I don't know. I thought we were going to have that, and then that never really came about. That requires quite a bit of work before the event, I think.
Okay.
But I mean,
Ann
that's
asked me to
my
bring it.
opinion. That's just
So,
my opinion.
I'm just raising it because Ann asked me to.
right. I mean, if somebody wants to in the next few days, get that, buy the tickets and, figure out how to make that work. I'm 100% behind that. It's not something I know much about. I've been to maybe 2 events in my life where they've had one, so. But if
Okay.
anybody wants to pick up the ball and run with it, I'm right behind you. So supporting that effort. Okay, one of the things I wanted to make sure of is that we have people who are going to be there to help set up. And I know that Highland Green friend Lane is going to let us use, he's going to help bring tables over to set up. That's right, Caroline?
Yeah.
And so we'll have, I would say that we'll probably want to start moving things over there and getting things set up somewhere between 2:30 and 3. Do you think?
Mhm.
Yeah, give us a good hour. And we'll need name tags, and we've got napkins covered. I can do name tags.
Ellen, I can do name tags because name tags because they should have the CREA logo on them.
Okay.
So I can just print off a sheet that just has the CREA logo, and I don't know, maybe I'll put the names on there.
But I was thinking not of, board members should always have a name tag, but for guests.
Oh, for guests, yeah.
Oh, they should all, we've asked Highland, we should have a few name tags there, but we've asked all the Highland Green residents to wear their name tags, and they're kind of used to doing that for events. They're on lanyards.
Yeah,
You
okay.
get one when you move in. That's one of
Yep.
the things you get your key and you get your name tag.
Okay. It's like orientation for college.
Exactly, yeah.
Bobby got, right, okay.
Going back to the setup, I think Ron and I are going to be working with Lane to get the tables
Good.
over.
Great. Yeah, Sue.
Oh, I had signed up. I'm happy to do whatever you need to do. I'll just come
Right,
over
and so
at
it's-
2:30 and put me to work.
So if you just arrive
Yeah.
around 3 we'll just need people, we'll try to spread out and start putting things up, but they're pretty specific. We probably need somebody to pick up ice, and we've talked about coolers. I can bring a couple of coolers. Can somebody pick up some bags of ice?
Well, let's see. I could probably, once we get set up, I could probably do that. Just go over to Hannaford's and get whatever we need.
Okay, that's still out there. And we'll also need trash receptacles, and we've talked about boxes, even with trash bags, trash bag liners. So that's something to think about if we have bins and if we want something for recyclables.
Right. I have that recyclable barrel that I brought to the annual meeting, and we put the clink bag in it. And I think I had a sign that said, what to deposit, just bottles and cans for clink. So I'll bring that again.
Okay.
Caroline, how many clink bags do you think we would build? 2, 3?
At the event?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 2.
Okay. Just want to make sure I have enough bags.
Yeah.
I'll
I
get
have
them.
some here.
Yeah, Jan?
One thing we've done at some community events is put out a bug cage for voluntary donations, no pressure, but that might be something to help defray some of the cost.
Diane says no.
No,
She's shaking her head no.
okay,
I think the message wants to be just about, we're not asking anything from you, and yet, yes, right, yet.
okay.
We could keep it out as an example of a cute thing, but
I also I didn't go to the last Off the Rockers event, but the other one I went to, they had people standing, one or two people at the walkway that you go down just to kind of direct people where to go.
good idea.
Oh, greeters, that's a good idea, so have a couple of greeters.
Have you seen that, Sue?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just so people get there, they don't know, they should know where to go, but
Yep. We had a 15th anniversary event down there, so we had done something like that before. That's a great idea, though. Good.
Will we have a sign up sheet?
To have like a clipboard does, so people can sign in.
Mhm.
So we know who people are. Would that be too pushy? What do you think, Nancy?
You're muted, Nance.
still muted.
I think that we can definitely have something like that available, but people probably will not do it, but you can, it's not too pushy, no.
Okay.
I mean, at the very least, we could have it at one of the tables and
Exactly.
kind of at the start welcoming, you could also ask people in that action and during the intermission.
So can you clarify something for me when we're not going to know who people are, so people are going to have to write out name tags for themselves, or?
If people from Highland Green, the board members should wear name tags, and Caroline can print those out.
Right.
For board members who don't have them. And if Highland Green residents, if many of them come with their name tags,
Right.
we'll just have some blank ones for people to fill out if they don't have their own name tag.
Okay.
Yeah, and all we need to capture is a name and maybe an address. We don't need emails or phone numbers.
Right.
We have all that information on our contact list, so we can, just to make it go faster.
Yeah.
And the clipboard could be, we want to make sure that you get our newsletter, our email newsletter, or, information about programs, something like that. That way we can say, this is what we just want to make sure that we know who you are so that we can get you some more information.
Mhm.
Okay.
So,
good idea. Anyone else? Yes? Sue, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, at an earlier planning meeting, I didn't go to the last one. We had talked about bringing some things down or up, whatever, from the ecology center. Is that still something we're doing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you need
Yeah.
help with that?
Possibly, yeah.
Because I'm right here. I mean, I'm right here. I could
Right, yeah.
pick them up on my way down. So
Just roll down the hill and roll back up.
Right. Just let me know.
Okay.
Unless that stuff, if we have it at the ecology center, we could take it in Elaine's truck too.
Yep.
That's true. I mean, some of it is going to be fragile, like.
That's what I was thinking.
We're gonna have
Displays.
some mounts.
The mounts would not want to be hanging out with the tables.
No, well, we can make more than one trip. I mean, it's not like we just
So-
did it once.
Has everybody signed up to bring a beverage or food? I think the answer is
Do we
yes.
have, from people's experience, do you think we have enough of everything? Because I was going to try to fill in.
Right, exactly. I think it seems to me that we have lots of beverages, and that we might want to have, so as people look at and I can send this around again, the sign up sheet we have right now: goldfish, crab dip, and crackers from Jan and Maureen, always a winner. And I was going to bring some veggies and dip and ask John Chaddock where he got the trail mix. I was going to buy a big, thing of trail mix. And Susan's bringing cheese and crackers for 75 to 100 people. That just doesn't sound like enough to me. So
I was wondering if, Susan says she's bringing hummus and pita chips.
oh, okay. And not cheese and crackers. Should I change that? Okay.
I can bring cheese and crackers if you want.
And I was thinking about maybe getting, like at Hannaford, a plate of mixed, what do you call those? The nori rolls, the little, is that too messy? But they're individual servings, like that have avocado and a little bit of something inside. What do you think about that? Or is there something else that would be better? Or like a plate of, get from Hannaford, cut into small pieces, like roll-ups or something that's like a cut into appetizer side, something
Like wraps that you sort of,
yeah, cut up. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds good.
I just have a question because the folks at Highland Green who have been to some of these concerts before, I'm just curious if you think that the Highland Green folks who turn out for these are enthusiastic eaters. I know there are some crowds that are, but if this is not, let's not go overboard and have oodles of leftover food.
For the Highland Green events, it's bring your own. So you don't.
Well, that's since COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people will eat.
People will eat. I've never been to a Highland Green event where all the food isn't gone.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Ellen, the other thing on that list, we have pretzels. We have a lot of pretzels.
Right.
Right. We have lots of pretzels. I'll add that too.
So I was kind of curious as to whether there are any COVID-related considerations with this, or it's just nope, throw out a bunch of food and go at it.
Well, I think we had talked about this, a couple of us, and jump in, anyone. I don't feel like we, how do I want to say this? If people are careful and the food that we set out is not something where people are going to double dip, you take whatever it is that you're going to eat and you eat it. I don't think I would worry too much. That's my feeling. I guess I don't want to put everything in little plastic, little Dixie cups.
Yeah.
Were any people wearing masks at the recent OTR concert?
No.
So.
And I judge my safety level by Barbara Combs' husband, who is a scientist, and he is incredibly cautious, like so cautious. And the fact that he was there and Barb was playing and singing, to me, that's like higher than the CDC level. So just saying.
I mean, we could put some signage out saying, please try to maintain,
People are going to do what they're going to do. They sit next
Yeah, I don't think you need to put out extra stuff. I think people are pretty respectful.
I think people who are going to come are feeling comfortable.
Right.
Right, and those who aren't comfortable won't come.
Right.
Which raises the question, are there any board members who aren't comfortable coming? I mean, there are.
So far, so good.
I, for one, plan on double dipping.
You're gonna be masked and gloved.
I do have a question. So I'm bringing some iced tea. I was going to bring it by the gallons, and I'm wondering, am I responsible for the cups for my own pile of drinks?
Hold on, do I have cups? I didn't put cups down there. How is that possible?
I have some, let's see, I have some cups that were left over from another event, but I think we talked about just getting some paper cups, and I'd be happy to pick those up.
I think I have some from, I think we should use, if we have stuff from leftover events, I think I've got some too. So if people can bring cups, and we should probably look, if we can, to being able to recycle the cups that we bring. You know, either throw them away so that they are recyclable, or, you know, in some cases, there's some small plastic ones, you can wash them. And I'm happy to do that.
Should I get some small cups for like to put the pretzels in, like we did at the annual meeting, and the gorp, the trail mix?
Yeah, I would say yes. I can get some too. Let me just add that to my list.
Do we have like little plates on the list, which could serve for other purposes, but.
Right. Rennie's is probably good for this. And napkins, you said you had Caroline and Bob, right? You said something
A
about
lot of napkins.
Okay, no more napkins, cups and plates. So I'll put down me and you, Caroline. How about that for cups and
Okay,
plates?
yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Let's see. I'm getting got some tablecloths and flowers. You've got name tags. So I'll send this around again, the planning. And if you want to add something to it, add yourself or something else, that would be great. And we'll go from here. Keep our fingers crossed. And, you know, if it turns out we have 200 people, what we say is FHB, which is family hold back, right? So that's, you know, the more the merrier. If you know, that's a wonderful problem to have. And assuming we're all bringing something that we like ourselves, if we don't have as many people, take your stuff home and enjoy it. You know? Okay. Any other questions about the event?
Do you have enough cleanup?
Yeah.
Yes, we have Tim and me and Dave
And me.
and Ron, right?
Ron
So
and Bob,
I think we'll be fine.
And me.
And Caroline, right? They're those people who just stay. You know?
Is
What
there
else?
is there plenty of parking?
It's going to be up at the community center.
Yeah.
So people end up parking, you know, they'll park at the community center, they'll park on the road.
Well, they'll park at the
They'll park at the golf.
Golf course.
with the duck. But there'll still be people playing golf, so I don't know what that parking's gonna look like.
4 o'clock, it's on a Tuesday, it's not gonna be very full.
Can you park along Mountain Road?
You really shouldn't, no.
No,
I mean, people will park like the exit, you know, coming out of the community center, and maybe even the 1 or 2 spaces on Evergreen Circle near the community center. I've seen that, people.
What about down the road that goes to the right before just
It's easier to park in the golf place. There'll be plenty of space there.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna drop off my stuff and then park my car over at the golf
yeah,
course. And
I
walk over.
park in a neighbor's driveway near there, so I won't be parking there.
Okay, and
Yeah.
Sue, I'll follow up with you about what to bring from the ecology center. I can't remember, I might have talked to Sarah and Carrie about bringing that stuff, but I'll let you know what.
Just let me know if you need help.
Okay.
Okay, team. I think we're good. Yep, I like the Highland Green cheerleading idea. So I'll just hope that right, exactly. We'll get, I don't know if you guys have colors. I know that you have
Green is our color.
Green, right, of course. You have neighborhoods like, I want to say MP3, which reminds me of music, but
North Face, yeah.
yeah. So do most of the people within, I'll call it our neighborhood, the phase 3 neighborhood, are they the ones that typically come to these events?
No, people come from all over.
Oh, really? So we can get people from other phases.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. All phases come.
Okay, because I had heard, it's another rumor, that people who purchased homes and live in the earliest phases closer to 196 don't have as much to do or know much about CREA, or I don't know. Anyway.
Well, that may be the case.
That may be the case, but they certainly come to events.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And our ambassadors
will be out in force.
That's right. And is it NP1 and is that how you do your neighborhoods, your phases?
Oh, it's
Oh.
south phase. Probably Bob knows it much better than I do.
South is Heron and down Red Pole and down that way
Okay.
for the community center. Then you hit P1, which is the historic center, it's called.
Okay.
And then you get to NP1, new phase.
Okay, actually, I think I may have a map that has those phases marked out for Highland Green. I was just thinking, talking to people, it can sometimes, bye, Tim. It
CREA,
can
it's
be
the ecology center.
to know their name.
The ecology center abuts NP3 and NP2.
Okay.
So Fitch is NP2, right across the street from the ecology center parking lot, and where Barbara lives and that's NP3.
Okay.
Red maple, and then the other honey locust on the other side.
It's the start of the tree names. They go from
Right.
birds, and then once you hit NP3, the streets are named after trees.
Okay. So when you do the cheerleading, you could do it by neighborhood. I mean.
Well,
how-
unfortunately, all of us are mostly MP3, I think.
That's what yeah. Anyway, just to talk to people about where they live it would be good.
Yeah,
So-
I'm gonna send the
Something,
group.
can I ask something while everybody's still here? Diane said, I told her that we had a really long list of volunteers. I mean, probably over 30 people who have volunteered, and the discussion was of reading all of their names. And Diane said that's too long, that's too many. So my thought was to type up those names with what they've done for CREA, and have a recognition, volunteer recognition paper, as a display on one of the tables. Is that?
I think.
That's much more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And we can certainly, you can reference that and say that the list is too long for us to go through, but they're here and everybody should see them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's just another plug for doing our volunteer recognition event. We'll add that to the list, maybe in the spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just saying, we have over 40 volunteers from Highland Green. It's kind of a nice number.
It is. It's a nice number. Well, thank you, everyone. It's lunchtime or beyond. Good to see you. See you all on Tuesday, if not before.
Just a quick thing for Ellen, Caroline, Sue, and then I'm also going to do this for Ron, Valerie, and Ann. I'm sending out a list of the 20 or so new people in Highland Green for 2021. So if any of them attend, we can
Great.
kind of recognize their names. So you're going to get that now.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.